Hello everyone. This is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki was chosen by Aureliana, the sister of the circles, and became loved and feared, part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. It has been 2 weeks since Naruto first found Ino as the second sister. In that time he has not seen her because of training and missions. Sasuke has become more broody and has been distancing himself further from Naruto and Sakura to the point Kakashi has been trying to come up with some way to help teamwork. Some are a little extreme. Flashback. Kakashi appeared at Team 7 meeting spot and saw Naruto and Sakura sparring on top of the water as Naruto was using trench knives and Sakura was using kunais as 20 Kage from Naruto were walking up and down a tree cutting leaves on all of his fingers while trying to get the ones on his toes to stay in position to be cut. Kakashi looked and saw Sasuke with his arms crossed glaring daggers at them and he sighed thinking, it's been nearly 2 weeks and he refuses to do anything other than what I order and he is getting weaker from not asking for help and getting better like those two are. He cleared his throat and Naruto and Sakura stopped their spar and Sakura said, I still can't believe you're not 2 hours late. 1 hour is an improvement for you, sensei. Naruto put the trench knives away and Sasuke got up walking over to where the other three were now standing but stopped as all three were standing on the water a few feet away. Kakashi looked at him sighing and said, well, today's mission has been cancelled. Apparently the man who has been having most of our genin teams doing D-rank missions recently left the Leaf Village. The Hokage has decided that it's time the genin teams started to work on more productive things. Sakura asked, what do you mean, sensei? Kakashi smiled as he said. 2 hours later Sakura was pissed. No, saying she was pissed would be like saying you could put out a forest fire with one person's piss. It's a big understatement. Why was she pissed? Well, Naruto was standing on his hands on top of hot spring water with Sakura standing on his feet holding 2 ninja wires that held Sasuke above her head with the wires wrapped around his arms and legs slung over a wire running from a tree on each side of the hot spring while Kakashi read them aloud from his Ika Ika Paradise book. If she let go to attack Kakashi, Sasuke would fall on her or Naruto, forcing them down into the hot water below. Naruto asked, now why Aegean are we doing this exercise, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi stopped reading and said, like I told you before, this exercise is designed to help in all 3 areas you each have trouble. You Naruto on chakra control, which even though is getting better is still nowhere near as good as it could be or needs to be. Sakura, your use of chakra is amazing and so is your control, but your physical strength as well as chakra reserves are small, which is why you are using chakra to stick to Naruto feet while you use chakra to help strengthen your arms. As for you Sasuke, your refusal to be a team player and trust your teammates is dangerous, so I have both of them holding your life in their hands like they would on a mission. Now until Naruto control slips, Sakura runs out of chakra or you become a team player, freeing yourself and helping Sakura down. This exercise will continue. End flashback. Needless to say, after 5 hours of this, Sakura and Naruto both dropped Sasuke like a bad habit right into the hot springs since he refused to help Sakura to end the training. Today was supposed to be their day off, but Naruto and Sakura were at the training ground Naruto used as a child. Naruto was currently standing on the edge of the waterfall on the downside of it, keeping from slipping further with chakra, and Sakura was laying on the water below. Naruto was only in a pair of swim trunks with frogs on them and Sakura had a 2-piece pink bikini. Sakura asked, so how is your private training coming, Naruto-kun? I know we don't show our true skills at team practice and I am just wondering. Naruto, who had his eyes closed concentrating, said, I don't know for sure. When I do the hidden mist jutsu I cover way too much of an area and I can still see. According to the scroll you gave me, it's supposed to be so thick you can't see anything within 3 feet of you. Sakura said, yeah, that's a hard one to get because you have to pull the water for it back to you. What about your other studies? Naruto thought and said, well, I got Mizubunshin no Jutsu down no problem. They don't give the mental feedback like shadow clones do, but they do cost less chakra so I can make more. Sakura nods and asked, so is that all you've been doing? I mean besides our team practices. Naruto frowns and said, no, I have been doing the training Asuma-sensei suggested, and I have also been working on a few other things that I want to be surprises. Sakura smiles and said, well, I like surprises. Come down here and relax a little. As she lets her control slip so only the top half of her body was above the water. Naruto opened his eyes and said, sure, as he backflipped and fell into the water below. A few moments later he surfaced and swam over to Sakura. Sakura asked, so, what's on your mind these days besides training? Naruto thought and said, trying to figure out who the rest of you are and what I am supposed to do. I feel like there is so much I am supposed to do now but don't know what. As he frowned. Sakura swam up and put her arms around him and said in a soft, kind voice, Naruto-kun, you're doing everything you're supposed to do. Ino and I are both proud of the advancements you have made. Hell, your progress is outstanding actually. You just need to realize that there is a time and place for everything. Naruto sighed, closing his eyes, and Sakura leaned in and kissed him, making his eyes open for a moment before closing again and returning the kiss. Sakura moved her legs around his waist and pulled herself against him, and he broke the kiss and said, Sakura, I don't think we should go any further right now. What about the others? It's not fair to them if we go further. As he felt her grinding her groin area into his. He read enough of Ika Ika Paradise to know exactly where this was heading. Sakura smiled and put her mouth by his ear and whispered, it's all right. I talked to them recently and we decided that it don't matter who gets you first because it was your choice. Just as long as you love us all equal is all we ask. Besides, after we found out something from Kyuubi, I decided I wanted to decide when I would do it and not when my body decided to. Naruto closed his eyes and laid his head on her shoulder and said, you know, I've been thinking a lot lately, and I remember when I was younger one of you came to me on the Hokage mountain and saved me from my pain. She asked me a question, why do I want to be strong? At first I thought it should be so people would quit being mean to me. Now that I know about Kyuubi, I know that's not going to happen, so I thought, why would I want to get strong? Should I be strong so I could live longer or so I don't have to be afraid anymore? I realize now that those were all wrong. The reason I should get strong is not for myself but for those I care about. As he tried to distract himself and was failing. Sakura said, you're precious people. Naruto thought, which was getting harder to do, and said, yeah, my precious people. Sakura asked, what makes you say that? I mean, how can you be sure that is the true reason to be strong? Naruto let out a little whimper as Sakura rubbed her knee against his crotch as she slowly started to swim both of them toward the shore. He finally said, my dad. Now that I know who he is, I think about why he did what he did. I mean, he could have taken me and ran, but he didn't. Instead, he sealed Kyuubi in me and protected the village. I realized that it was not the village as a whole he was saving, but actually me. Sure, we might have ran and live, or we both could have died. He did what he had to, so he knew I would live. He was naive, but his intentions were true. I don't know how he got the strength to do it himself though, because I don't know if I could in the same situation. I think I would have failed. As he felt his back being pushed against a couple of boulders near the shore. Sakura pulled away from him a little and thought, can I tell him? You heard all that right? A voice in her head said, you can tell him what the truth is about the saying, but not me, or that he passed my test. I will reveal that later. Sakura smiled and softly said as she lowered her lips beside his ear so she could nibble on them and said, no, you would have succeeded. Someone told the future you a sentence that changed your life forever. You nearly told me it today, but you know enough to be told the sentence. Only when you protect something that is precious to you do you find true strength to overcome anything. Naruto was shuddering by the lips on his ear as he took in the words, and Sakura took that moment to rub her hand against his crotch, making his eyes flutter. Before he realized it, his shorts had been pushed down and Sakura had put both her arms over his shoulder and was using them as a lever as she slowly started to push him into her. Naruto was shocked by the tightness he now felt on his manhood, and he remembered reading how it was hard for a girl her first time, and he imagined this was Sakura's first time because of their age. Sakura had her eyes open and was looking in his as her bikini bottom floated on top of the water between them. Naruto was perfectly still as he felt something push against the tip, and Sakura whimpered and Naruto asked, are you sure? There's no turning back after this. Sakura smiled as she tried to adjust to this feeling and thought, man, I can't believe in both lives this is the first time I ever done this and it's painful but I knew it would be. He's so kind and caring to worry about me. I guess I should thank Kakashi for giving him those books. Nah. Sakura said in a soft voice. I want this, it's just. I never done this before and as her eyes rolled back in her head as a tear slowly fell down her cheeks. Naruto leaned forward and pulled her into a hug, licking the tear off her face and whispered into her ear and said, I am sorry, as he pulled her tights against him and held her close as he rubbed her back. Sakura was shocked when she felt the hands on her hips roughly pull her down onto him. She knew it would hurt but she also felt something else in the pain she felt. Unsure what it was, she just laid there a few moments as her body adjusted to having him inside of her completely. After the pain subsided she tried to move a little to adjust to it and Naruto, who felt her slowly respond to him, now started to slowly pull out and back in just a little, at first letting her get used to his size. He was by no means small in that area, at a little over 8 in length, and his width was more than enough to fill her completely and then some. As he slowly pulled out and pushed back in, going a little further out each time, Sakura pain that had bothered her before was now building into the first wave of pleasure. Sakura started to aid Naruto in his movements, making their speed increase. Naruto now looked in her eyes and saw something he had not seen before in them. When he looked before, they were kind and caring eyes, but now they had a hint of lust in them. Neither said anything as they increased speed and tempo. Naruto, having enough of being on the bottom, quickly switches position, putting Sakura against the rocks, giving him more power. Sakura started to let whimpers and mews of pleasure out as Naruto let grunts out, and neither would break the contact they had with each other's eyes. Sakura felt herself approaching a climax as she quickly orgasmed, and as she was panting, Naruto increased his speed even more. Sakura would have wondered how he was doing it in the water if she had any coherent thoughts at the moment, and she might have realized Naruto had moved them to the shore completely and they were on solid ground and her top had been through somewhere as Naruto massaged her and softly bit her on the base of her neck, but she was too far gone as the 2 and 3 orgasm hit and Naruto felt himself closing and his eyes conveyed an unasked question, and Sakura saw it and said, "Come in me, don't hold back and give me everything you got." In ragged breaths. Naruto nods and closed his eyes as he increased his pace to one that had the sound of his balls slapping her as to that of a drumroll. Sakura and him both stiffened at the same time as her 4th and his 1st orgasm hit, and he continued to move in her to help give every drop he could and help her through the one she was experiencing. After that moment he collapsed on her, breathing hard, and whispered in her ear, "I love you." Sakura whispered back, "I know, I love you also," as she tried to gather her breath. Naruto, as he felt himself completely spent, rolled off of her and pulled her close to him to hold her. He rubbed her back as she laid her head on his chest. Both just sat there enjoying the moment, afraid to break the mood, and Sakura blinked before giggling and said, "I see your stamina works in another area also," as she saw him getting hard Aegean. Naruto chuckled himself and was about to say something when he stiffened and said, "Sakura, get your cloths, we're not alone." By her ear as not to alert whoever it is he smelled. Sakura stiffened and slowly stood up, walking over to the water to grab her bikini bottom when Naruto screamed, "Sakura, look out," as several kunai were thrown from a tree at her. Sakura turned to Naruto, voice looking for the threat, but before she had time to worry she felt herself be replaced and the sound of metal piercing flesh echoed through the clearing, making her turn and look as Naruto was on the ground with several kunai in his back. Sakura screamed, "Naruto, are you okay?" as she ran for him only to have to jump away as a figure landed between her and Naruto. Sakura narrowed her eyes at the figure and glanced at Naruto, and she heard Kyuubi in her head shout, "Someone get help, Naruto in bad shape and I can't do anything." The weapons are coated with a type of poison that neutralizes not only his chakra but my own. Sakura cursed herself as most of the people who could hear this message were out of the village, and Sakura thought, "Ino, get her quick. We're at the training ground behind the Hokage mountain. Mizuki attacked us and Naruto replaced himself with me. Hurry." In the Hokage office, Ino grabbed her head a moment and Asuma asked, "Are you okay, Ino?" The Hokage looked at Ino as she let go of her head and started moving toward the window, and she said, "Naruto, he's being attacked by Mizuki and he's in trouble and needs help." The training ground behind the Hokage mountain. As she jumped out the window heading by rooftop toward the mountain, leaving a shocked group behind. The Hokage quickly got to his feet and said, "What's going on, Asuma?" Asuma shook his head and said, "I don't know, but Ino won't lie about something like that. Come on, you guys, let's follow her." The Hokage yelled, "Guards," as the rest of Team 10 left following Ino. The door burst open and Katetsu and Azumo burst in, and the third said, "Both of you follow me. I just received word Naruto being attacked Aegean at Training Ground 86. As he left with a leaf shushin followed by both his Chunin guards. Sakura ducked under a kunai swipe from Mizuki and he said, "Well, this is just too perfect. Not only do I get to kill the demon but his little whore as well," as he backhanded her across the face. Sakura cursed herself and thought, "I can't use my chakra to fight right now because I am already low from earlier. I need it to save Naruto," as she backflipped away again. Sakura asked as she tried to catch her breath, "Why did you attack us, Mizuki?" Mizuki said, "Oh, I was given a job to kill the demon, and when I saw you whoring yourself out that you needed to die also. I would please myself with your body, but I don't want to catch any diseases you might have got from that demon." Sakura narrowed her eyes as she started to let her anger get to her and she said, "Like you could. I enjoyed taking those balls from you a few years ago, bastard. The only demon I see is you." That froze Mizuki in the spot he was as he face turned from one of a maniacal smile to that of one of intense hate and rage. He charged at Sakura with renewed vigor, and as he had quit playing with her and now trying to kill her as he screamed, "I will kill you, you bitch," as any idea of tactics went way out the window. Sakura cursed herself as she fell for a fake slash and received a cut across her arm, and she cried out just as Ino and the rest of Team 10 arrived, followed moments later by the Hokage and his two guards. Ino, seeing her friend in trouble and Naruto on the ground, started doing hand signs and slammed her hands into the ground and said, "Doden. Senbons," as Senbon needles shot out of the ground and impaled Mizuki with 1,000s of needles running him through. Sakura looked at Ino as she held her arm and said, "Ino, get over here quick, chakra poison in my arm," as she tried to stop the bleeding, ignoring the fact she was in nothing but her birthday suit. The Hokage saw Naruto on the ground and started to run over to him as both his guards ran over to Mizuki to see if he was still alive. Asuma followed his dad to check on Naruto as Ino ran over to Sakura while doing hand signs and screamed, "Choji, Shikamaru, I need some fresh water and fast," as she put her hand above Sakura's arm. Both boys snapped out of their daze and ran to the river to get some water. The Hokage looked at Naruto as he prepared to grab him when Sakura screamed, "Don't move him or you will kill him," making the Hokage look at her. He said, "Sakura, this is no," as he shut up as he was blasted by a lot of ki from Sakura, and she screamed, "I mean it, I can tell both his lunges have been punctured as well as part of his spine and one has nicked his heart as well. If you remove the weapons or move him you will kill him. Each of those weapons were coated with the same poison Ino's removing from me. Just wait a moment and we can heal him." The Hokage looked at Sakura and Ino said, "She's right, whoever created this shit made it exactly to stop Naruto and his bloodline," as she glanced at the Hokage and then the boys, making him nod as he understood what she meant. "Oh, there would be questions later, but for now," he said, "are you sure you can heal him? If he's in as bad a shape as you both say, can you save him?" he asked. Shikamaru came over with a potato chip bag full of water and Ino placed her glowing hand that was over Sakura's wound in the water and it turned black, and both girls moved after that as Sakura did one hand signs, making her hand glow green as she hovered it above the wound as they ran to Naruto. Sakura shoved the Hokage out of the way and said, "Ino, follow behind me, removing the poison and sealing any leaks I miss as I go from heart, lunges and then spine. I am going to need a soldier pill and fast as my reserves are low now from training," as she began to work on his heart after removing the first kunai. Ino a moment behind her as Choji came over with another bag of water and Ino said, "Get me more Shika, he's got a lot more poison than Sakura did," ignoring the looks everyone was giving the two girls. Shikamaru muttered, "Troublesome," as he poured the water out that had the poison from Sakura in and ran back to the river. The Hokage slowly stood himself back up from where he was shoved away as his son walked over to him, both watching the events going on. He asked, "Since when do both Ino and Sakura know medical jutsu?" The third said, "I knew Sakura had mysteriously gotten some skills, but I passed it off as maybe some medic on the field told her, but the skill level both girls are showing is too good to be that. Also, that jutsu Ino used to kill Mizuki was a B-rank jutsu that only Ibiki and me know. How she learned it I don't know, but I will find out. Something's going on and I don't like it one bit. Katetsu walked over with Izuma and said, Mizuki dead, there's not really a lot to identify him with either. As he looked at both girls' work on Naruto. Izuma said, what the hell happened here? I mean, why are Naruto and that girl both, and how did a genin kill a chunin like that and not even flinch? Hell, they acting better than seasoned medic nins right now. Katetsu asked, is he going to make it? As both guards were among the few who actually liked Naruto and saw him as a hero. The third said, I don't know, but for some reason I believe he's in the best hands possible right now. Sakura screamed, hey, dipshits, anyone got any soldier pills? I am nearly out of chakra. As her hands started to flicker as she kept working. Izuma looked at the Hokage, who nods and ran over to Sakura, pulling one out, and she opened her mouth, not even looking up, and he put it in her mouth and she bit down on it, swallowing the pill, and felt her reserves return and asked, how soon, Ino? Ino, who was sweating, said, 5, maybe 6 minutes. Sakura said, shit, it's taking too long. Ino, take over left lunge for a second. Ino never bothered to ask why, as she put the poison in the third bag of water and quickly flipped through hand signs and moved her now glowing hands to where Sakura was working. Sakura, taking the moment, closed her eyes and said, initial gate. Kai, shocking everyone as she was covered in chakra and quickly moving her hands into motion and said, Kajbunshin no Jutsu. As 3 more Sakura popped out and all moved around Naruto as they each began to work on him. Ino quickly moved back as the real Sakura took back over working on Naruto. The Hokage was flabbergasted and said, I am definitely getting answers after this. Asuma nods and said, is that really Sakura and Ino? The third said, I don't know. Someone is going to explain to me exactly why 2 genins fresh by just a few weeks out of the academy can perform medical procedures that takes years of skills and knowledge, as well as use 2 separate forbidden jutsu and one only 2 people know. As the look of determination crossed his face. After several moments, Sakura arm spasmed and Ino said, Sakura, close the gate, your body starting to react to the backlash. Sakura continued and said, I can't, Ino, you know, like I do, no one currently at the hospital would actually help Naruto, right, and would rather see him dead. Besides, the moment I shut it off I am already going to collapse from chakra exhaustion. The Kajbunshins took most of my chakra, but it's the only way I could get to all the areas I need to in time. How long? Ino grunted and said, 30 seconds and then follow up. Sakura nods and Shikamaru asked, what are you talking about with the time? Ino said, till the poison's completely removed. If we can get it out, his bloodline will do the rest for us. Shikamaru glanced at Naruto worried and Choji asked, is he going to make it? Sakura, who was panting, released her Kajbunshins and said, that's it, I am out, Ino. As she closed the first gate and passed out beside Naruto. Ino sighed as she continued to work, and the third ran over with the others and checked Sakura before taking his coat off and picking her up, and Asuma said, I got her, dad. The third nods and said, take her to our compound and have Hizo take a look at her and no one else. Is that understood? I will be there shortly with Naruto as well. Asuma took Sakura and left in a swirl of leaves, and Katetsu asked, what do you want us to do, sir? The third sighed as he looked at Naruto and then Mizuki and Ino, who was still working, and said, wait until we're done and then I want you to go and get Ibiki to come and investigate this and have him find out who made that poison and what it's made of, so we can maybe make a cure for it, while Izuma stands guard of the area and make sure no one messes with the area until he arrives. A few moments later, Ino stopped as Naruto's body was covered in red chakra and she said, give him a few moments to let his bloodline work. As she started to wobble and start to fall back, and Shikamaru caught her and the third sighed and said, can you both bring her to my compound? I will have my personal doctor check on her as well as Sakura and Naruto. As he bent over to pick Naruto up. Shikamaru nods and Choji grabbed Ino's feet and said, sure, no problem. She's our teammate after all. The third nods and turns to the 2 chunins and said, you know what to do. As he left in a swirl of leaves. When he arrived at his home, he saw his personal doctor Hizo looking at Sakura as he set Naruto down on a bed in the small infirmary in his home and asked, how is she? Hizo sighed and said, she's going to be fine. It looks like she's mostly got a bad case of chakra exhaustion and some minor muscle damage, but from what Asuma told me, it's most likely from opening the gate. There was something else, sir, though. She's recently had intercourse, sir. I can't find any traces of force. I believe it's consensual, but she's also got some weird mark on her neck, sir. The third nods, looking at the mark on her neck, wondering what it is, and said, "Okay, can you look at Naruto now? Both Sakura and Ino, who will be here shortly, had to remove some kind of poison from him while healing damage to both lunges, heart and spine." Hizo got wide-eyed and ran to Naruto, shoving the third aside, and he muttered, "No respect," as he straightened himself back up, and Hizo whistled as he stopped checking Naruto and said, "You say that Sakura here and another girl named Ino healed him?" as he looked at the third. The third nods and asked, "Yes, why?" Hizo said, "Well, from what I can tell from what little scar tissue that is still healing on the inside, I would have believed that it was Tsunade who done the work by how complete the work was done." The third narrowed his eyes and said, "Yes, I believe they are very skilled. Is he going to be fine?" Hizo said, "Yes, he should be back to normal either tomorrow or the next day, depending on his friend," as he looked around to make sure no one overheard. The third nods and door to the room opened, and Asuma led Shikamaru and Choji inside, who were carrying Ino, and the third motioned for one of the empty hospital beds and turned to the boys after they put her down and said, "All right, boys. I want you to go on home for the day, but do not tell anyone about anything that happened. Not even your family. If anyone asks where any of those three are, just tell them I have them on a mission and that they can see me about it. Is that understood?" Shikamaru asked. "Are they going to be all right?" as the doctor checked Ino. The doctor said, "Yes, just a few days of rest and all three should be back to normal," as he finished checking her and said, "Just chakra exhaustion, sir." The third nodded and said, "Keep an eye on them for me, Hizo, and let me know the moment any of them awake or any change in condition," as he looked at Naruto, body thanking whoever it was that looked after him today. Asuma quickly moved the boys out of the room before they could ask any more questions, and the Hizo said, "Yes, sir," as he got some IV drips started to send fluids into them. As Shikamaru and Choji left the Sarutobi compound, Choji asked, "When did Ino learn to do that, and since when does Naruto have a bloodline?" Shikamaru looked up at the sky and said, "Women are troublesome." Choji pulled out a bag of chips and started to eat and said, "Well, Kiba loss, she's a natural pink," making Shikamaru trip and mutter, "Troublesome. It's been 3 days since the attack and none of the three have awoken yet." The third sighed and asked Asuma, "Has Hizo said anything about their condition?" Asuma said, "Only that they could be waking up any time now." The third nods and asked, "How is the rest of your team doing?" Asuma said, "Well, other than the fact they are worried about all three, not too bad. I had them pair up with the Uchiha under Kakashi right now so I could make sure no one else tries to get inside our compound to get to them. Once is bad enough." The third nods and said, "Yes, Ebis let it slip where they were when he took Konohamaru to get his arm checked after falling off a wall. I already told him not to let it happen again, but it's obvious almost everyone in the village knows about what happened now, or at least what they think happened." Asuma asked, "Any info on who her friend is?" The third said, "Ibiki still has him in his office having fun with him. It's lucky he was a pervert, or those three might not still be alive." Asuma nods, thinking back about what happened. Flashback. It was around 3 in the morning in Konoha when a figure silently entered the Sarutobi compound. The figure followed a map that detailed the layout of the compound toward the infirmary and checked for anyone who might be up. Seeing none, he crept into the room and saw 3 sleeping figures on 3 different beds. The figure pulled out a kunai and slowly made his way over to the middle bed where Naruto could be seen, and raised the blade into the air and was about to stab Naruto in the heart when a voice from behind him said, "Sexy no jutsu," making the man turn quickly and fly backwards with a nosebleed, as a kunai was standing there with clouds covering her modesty, and she had both her hands slowly caressing her in the clouds while making a mewing sound. After the man flew backward, the jutsu was released and Konohamaru ran over toward the man and grabbed the kunai he was about to stab Naruto with and pulled the fire alarm for the infirmary. Moments later, the third, along with Asuma and a few maids and Hizo, were running into the room and found Konohamaru holding the kunai to the man's neck, and Asuma quickly came over and arrested the man. The third asked, "What happened, Konohamaru?" Konohamaru said, I came by to check on boss because I couldn't sleep and I saw this guy getting ready to stab him with this. I used the sexy no jutsu to knock him out and grabbed his weapon and pulled the fire alarm. The third nods, rubbing his grandson's head, and said, everyone search out the rest of the compound and make sure no one else is here. Asuma, take him to Ibiki and find out why he's here and who he works for. Asuma nods, taking the now tied up man and Shushin away with him. The third looked at Konohamaru and said, I am proud of you. You just saved Naruto and possibly the girl's life also. Konohamaru blushed from his grandfather's praise and said, it was nothing. It's what anyone would do. The third shook his head and said, no, it's what a Hokage would do. As he walked out of the room, leaving a starry-eyed kid. End flashback. The door to the Hokage office opened up and the third gasped and asked, what brings you here, Tsunade? I thought you would never return. Tsunade looked around and said, take me to Naruto and the two girls now. I am not here for a social visit. As she looked disgusted to be back in the village. Shizune looked down and the third asked, how do you know about? Tsunade slammed her fist on the table and said, don't make me repeat myself. The third sighed and said, right, follow me. As he led them out of the tower toward his family estate. When they arrived, he showed them where the three teens were sleeping, and when they walked into the room they saw a girl with red hair and red eyes sitting in a chair holding Naruto's hand, and the third asked while preparing to defend Naruto, who are you and why are you here? The girl did not even look at them and the third said, don't make me repeat myself, how did you get here and why are you here? The girl looked at him and Tsunade and said, hello Shizune, it's good to see you again sister. The third and Tsunade both turned to Shizune, who walked by and hugged the redhead and said, it's good to see you again, though why are you here? I mean, shouldn't you still be there? Tsunade asked. Shizune, who is this woman? Shizune's eyes glossed over a moment and turned and said, it's a long story and you might want to come in and put up a privacy jutsu. I think it's time you and the Hokage learned the truth about a few things. The third cut his eyes at Tsunade, who was looking confused, and said, what is it that you believe we need to know about? The redhead said, how would you like to know why the Kyuubi attacked Konoha and why a genin can perform Tsunade's super strength, open gates, and can heal someone from a fatal wound? How would you also like to know how Naruto got all his stuff when he was 7 years old? Is that worth about an hour of your time? The third narrowed his eyes and Tsunade asked, what I want to know is why Shizune frantically had me come back to this village saying she had to see some man she loves when as far as I know she's never even really looked at most men more than to see if they had a debt receipt in their hands. Shizune said, I will answer all of that, but please listen to everything. Okay. The third said, very well, but if you do not tell me everything, and I do mean everything, then I will have you spending time with Ibiki. Is that understood? Both Shizune and the redhead nods, and the third closes the door and puts up a privacy jutsu and SATs down, though you could see that he was ready for a fight. Shizune walked over and started to check on the three teens, and Tsunade sits down while keeping an eye on her assistant. The redhead sighed and said, I suppose I should start off with the beginning. I will tell you everything, but please don't interrupt me since it's a long story, but it's very important. After getting nods and Shizune sat down beside Naruto, rubbing his hair away from his face, continued, around 2,000 years ago, a girl was born in a little fishing village in what is now called Wave Country. Her mother died during childbirth, and her father, who was a carpenter, was killed when she was 5 by a group of 8 thieves that called themselves the Masters. The girl was forced into a basic slavery to the 8 thieves and was forced to do any and every petty thing those men could think of. Luckily for her, none of the men would try and force themselves on her because their leader would have killed them, since he decided the girl would be of value to them. The girl was forced to learn how to fight and stealth skills as well as how to steal, all for them. The masters would go from village to village stealing, killing, and if the women were old enough and looked good enough, they would use them. This went on for 3 years after they killed the girl's father and took her. The leader then heard about a treasure. One that could bestow great power on anyone who possessed it. I was a treasure protected by a group of priestess of Inari. The leader of the group then had his men attack the temple that the treasure was supposed to be held, while the girl was ordered to sneak in and steal it. The girl was told if she did this that she would gain her freedom, which she wanted more than anything, since she knew it would only be a matter of time before the men decided to use her like she had been forced to watch them do to older women. The girl did steal the item while the priestess were distracted. It was a statue that was a gift to his followers that Inari used when he would come to the mortal world to deal with things. The girl took it to where she was told to and waited until the masters returned. When they did, the leader tried to figure out how to use it but could not. Thinking it was a lie, he decided to remove the jeweled eyes from the statue. When his blade touched the first eye, the statue came to life and everyone was paralyzed by the power of Inari who possessed the statue. Inari had witnessed what the men had done as well as the girl, and he knew why she did what she did, but she was guilty just as they were to him. He used his power and cursed all 8 of the men, turning them into demons, more specifically the Biju. The leader of the group, whose thirst for power was the cause of some of Inari followers' death, was made the weakest, Shikaku and the rest in order of reverse strength. He then sent them to the 4 corners of the world. Now Inari, after he cursed them, looked at the girl, and though he was displeased with what she did, he also was fair, so in turn he gave her a punishment that was both a blessing and a curse. He turned her into a kitsune. Now when he did this, he made her the new protector of the temple where the statue would be, and while there she was allowed to keep her human form, but if she ever left the valley where the temple was, she would instantly turn into her fox form. Also, whenever the temple was threatened, she also was turned into her fox form. The girl agreed because of her guilt and not really having a choice anyways, and she learned that as was a blessing because the priestesses treated her kindly, and a curse because she had a very long life. Not immortality, but long enough to make normal people believe that she was. Now time went by and soon the leader of the masters came back to the temple wanting his revenge. The girl who had taken her duty to protect the temple trained, and then when he arrived she fought and beat him. Inari came after Shukaku was beaten and sent him back to the desert where he would forever be held. He then looked at the girl and gave her a blessing. He allowed her, since she was sad from seeing her friends die, the ability to turn one priestess into a kitsune like she was, though they would stop gaining power after they reached the 6th tail. The girl she chose became the first sister of the circle. Now as time passed, the other masters also came and challenged the girl, and she defeated them and protected the temple and was given another sister each time she defeated them. When she defeated the 8th tail, Inari made her the new ruler of the demons on earth since she had been able to beat each of them. He also decided that since it had been 1,000 years, to allow her a chance to stay in her human form outside of the valley, since sometimes thieves and others came there to try and rob the temple, forcing her to leave the temple, and also she was lonely wanting a family. By this time she had become the Kyubi. She was saddened because if she ever left the valley she was treated like a demon, so Inari told her all she would have to do to be able to stay human was to be forgiven by someone she had directly wronged. She could not ask for it or wrong someone on purpose. Someone would have to truly forgive them of their own decision when they felt the girl was fully sorry. The girl was confused and Inari laughed at her politely and said that there was a reason for this and she would one day learn why. He said the person she would be forgiven by would be blessed by him to stop a great evil. Something that she herself would not be able to beat. She was told that he would be the one she was destined to serve as wife and mother to his children, but only after he passed a test. The test was he would have to beat her and force her to reveal her birth name. Not the name the masters had given her or the name the priestess gave her, but her true name her mother and father gave her. The one she had not heard since she was 5 years old. When that happened, she would make him the new lord of the demons. Tsunade at this point said, "What is the reason you are telling us this story? I don't see any reason why it's important to what we want to know." The girl smiled and said, "I was just getting there, Tsunade." Now the girl continued with her sisters guarding the temple until a little over 100 years ago, when 2 brothers came to the temple and asked for blessing. Inari came before the 2 boys and gave them both a blessing. He made them promise to create a mighty tree that would never fall. This confused the boys, but Inari said they would understand one day. He also gave one an item. He said it was filled with part of his power and that the older of the 2 should protect it because a great evil would come and only that item would have the ability to stop it. Now these 2 boys grew up and together did create a great tree like Inari told them to. I can see that the Sandyame is starting to see where this is going. Tsunade looked at the third who had his full attention on the story and she asked, "What is she talking about, sensei?" The third said, "Think about it, Tsunade. 2 men, brothers that created a great tree and an item that was blessed with the power of Inari himself. You have that item on you this very moment." Tsunade's eyes got wide as she realized what they were talking about and she gently rubbed the crystal around her neck. The third said, "Proceed please, I think we are fixing to discover something that we may not know." The girl nods and said, "Well, as you have figured out who the two were, I can now continue." Now after the great tree, Konoha, was founded, the older brother faced off against a man who killed him. The man was named Uchiha Madara. Now Madara did not die that day like most believe. He was wounded but not killed. Fearing the power the Shodaime used against him that day, he had already learned of them being blessed by Inari being the Shodaime's friend. Now Madara took some time to recover and around 50 years ago he came to the temple. The girl tried to fight him, but because of the Sharingan, Madara was able to torture her and hurt her, but she was saved by her sisters and Madara was forced to leave. Vowing to get his revenge, he started to plot. He then came across a man with the legendary bloodline Rinnegan, and took him as an unofficial partner and trained him in everything he knew. The man, after learning everything from Madara, used a forbidden jutsu and imprisoned Madara mind in the corpse of an Uchiha who only had one eye. After giving his other to his best friend, the third's eyes got wide again listening. Then the man who had his own revenge against his twin brother decided to get the power he had heard Madara mouth off about, but he kept Madara in his new body as a plaything to aid him. He then came to the temple of Inari with Madara and killed each of the sisters and tortured the girl who was the Kyuubi. He then stole the statue of Inari and left. The girl vowed to get vengeance for her sisters and started searching for the man. She only could remember his face and soon found a man with a bingo book. She did not know that he had a twin, so when she saw a man who looked like the one who tortured her and killed her sisters, she, the third said, came to Konoha and was captured. The girl nods and Tsunade asked, "You're the girl, you're the Kyuubi, aren't you?" The girl looked down and said, "I was." Making both Tsunade and the third look at her confused. The third asked, "What do you mean was?" The girl said, "I can tell you some of it, but if I tell certain things it will mean the death of me, Naruto-kun and the 8 others including Ino, Sakura, and Shizune here, so don't ask me anymore if I say I can't. Deal?" Both looked at her and nod and she said, "Naruto here has been blessed by Inari. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you what the blessing is. For the 9 of us that care for him and will marry him one day, Inari sent our minds back in time to save Naruto and aid him in completing a task for Inari. Even I do not know what the exact task is, since Inari said only Naruto would find out. We can't tell you anything about the future, or like I said, we would instantly die, so each of us have been preparing. That is why the girls have skills they should not have." All of them agreed to do this and each of them received the blessing of Inari as well. They became the second sisters of the circle. The third looked at Shizune as 3 tails formed out of her back and she nods and Tsunade blinked and said, "Now that's something you don't see every day." The third asked as he saw the girl with red hair have 6 tails out of her back, "Why do you only have 6 tails and how are you out of the seal?" The girl looked at Naruto and said, "Truthfully, I don't know how I am currently free. One moment I was in the cage making sure everything was alright with his body and no traces of the poison remained, and the next I had lost the ability to use 3 of the elements I could control and I had 6 tails and can no longer remain in his body. I have an idea, but it's just a guess." Sakura, who was looking at everyone, asked, "What is it, Q?" Kyuubi looked at her and said, "I think he might have awakened his bloodline, or someone awoke it for him." Tsunade blinked and asked, "Who would awaken his bloodline and what is it?" The third looked at Naruto and walked over to him and raised his eyelid and said, "It appears you are correct." His eyes have changed. As he looked at Naruto's eyes and saw several circles in it, and he closed Naruto's eye and turned, but he accidentally scratched Naruto's arm with the kunai he had hidden in his robe in case of an attack. The moment he did, Kyuubi grabbed the same arm on her body and screamed, "Oh!" as everyone looked and saw a kunai wound on her arm. The third turned and looked as he saw blood on Naruto's arm and said, "It appears that you are still bound to Naruto. Anything that harms him, harms you." Sakura ran over while wincing from not moving for a few days and started to heal her arm as Shizune healed Naruto's. Tsunade was frozen in place from the sight of the blood. The third walked over and said, "Well, can you tell us your name?" Kyuubi said, "No, not my real one, at least until Naruto passes my test. While I was at the temple I was called Ruby. You can call me that." The third said, "Well, Ruby, since any damage Naruto receives goes to you also, could you let me check if Before he had a chance to say anything or react, she grabbed the kunai from his coat and cut her hand before holding the kunai toward him to take. The third was stunned and he looked at Naruto and saw he had the same cut and said, "So it appears that it goes both ways, meaning if one of you die, you both die." Ruby, as she was now called, said, "That's understandable since both of our souls had been bound for at least 14 years currently." The third asked, "What are your intentions now?" Ruby said, "If you're wondering if I still intend to attack this village, the answer is no, though there are a few I wish I could for what they did to him when he was younger, but can't, since basically I am honor bound to all oaths and promises Naruto makes, and he promised himself and his parents' memory that he would not seek revenge against those who are too stupid to realize the difference between a cage and a prisoner." The third asked, "So he's talked to you?" Sakura said, "We arranged for him to meet her and learn about us the day he graduated. Currently he only knows Ino and I are kitsunes like Ruby here, but he knows there are 7 others." Tsunade looked at Shizune and asked, "So he does not know you?" Shizune said, "Since we are all now kitsunes, we have to follow certain traditions of sorts. One is the females have to make a test for him to pass. It's like a dating rules that have to be followed. If he does, we basically wait until he marks us as his, like he has done with Sakura." The third said, "And I believe that explains why you both were that day." Sakura blushed and looked at herself, and the third said, "I had one of my maids cloth you. Is that mark on your neck the mark deal you spoke of?" Ruby said, "Yes. Now when Naruto dies, if Sakura does not have a child below the age of puberty, she will pass away within a month." The third looked at her and asked, "And if she does have a child who has not reached puberty?" Sakura said, "Then after he or she does reach puberty, I will die within a month also. Kitsunes are very loyal and protective of their mates. So much so they can't live without the other." Ruby said, "Only the females. Males are different. Don't ask me how, because I really don't know. All the stuff I do know is from Inari himself or the records the temple had. All I really know is no kitsune is ever born male. Somehow all male kitsunes are made one by something. For Naruto, it was me being sealed into him. At that moment he became the prince of all kitsunes. I do know that any children we have with him will also be girls. It will be impossible for us to have any boys." The third rubbed his eyes and asked, "Can you tell me who the others are so I know who will give me a headache?" Shizune said, "I have talked to each of them and they have agreed, but you must not call them out or mention any of this until Naruto know for sure, since he is currently running tests and still has others to pass or be prepared for." The third sighed and said, "Very well, though will you explain how you talked to them and how you knew Naruto was in danger?" Shizune said, "Each female in a pack like the sisters can send mental messages to each other. Both Ruby here and Sakura both called out for help when he was attacked, and when my eyes glossed over earlier I was talking to them all. We still have our private thoughts and all, but it's like a defense mechanism that allows the females to protect the young, is why we have it." Naruto could only hear Ruby in his head, but now I don't know for sure if he can still or not. The third nods and waited, and Shizune said, "Well, I should warn you, not all are from Konoha. There's Ino, Sakura, myself, Tenten, Ruby. Now, as we said earlier, Naruto only know for sure about Ino, Sakura and Ruby." The third nods, and Tsunade got up and started to leave when Shizune asked, "Tsunade-sama, where are you going?" Tsunade stopped and said, "You don't need me anymore." Sakura said, "We do. We need you very soon, unless you wish for someone you care for to die Aegean, and know you could have stopped it." That froze Tsunade in her spot, and Ruby asked, "Tsunade, I have a proposition for you. I may not have my full power anymore, but there is one thing I can still do by still being the king of the Biju. How would you like to be able to talk to your brother Aegean for 1 hour? Making everyone in the room wide-eyed." Tsunade was shaking as she slowly turned and looked at Ruby, only to go wide-eyed as there standing beside Ruby was her brother Naoki. Tsunade asked, "What must I do?" Ruby said, "All you have to do is accept a bet and pay off your debt if you lose." Tsunade looked at her and asked, "What's the bet?" Ruby said, "Pick any 5 jutsu that are not bloodline restricted or ones that will kill the user to use. If Naruto here can learn all 5 jutsu between now and the Chunin exams, you will return for the exams this year and take over as the Godime Hokage before the finals. Between now and then you will train as if your life depended on it, including getting over your fear of blood. Something is coming and we need your strength and skills for it." The third said, I thought you said you could not tell us anything about the future. Ruby asked, have I told anything specific about the future or have I just given a general impression of what might happen? The one thing I have learned as my time as a kitsune is there is always a loophole somewhere. You just have to know how to exploit it and find it. The third sighed and said, I see your point. Thought, why does Tsunade need to replace me before the finals of the exams? Ruby said, well, it's a good time to make a public announcement to shock both allies and enemies, don't you think? It's a good time to replace someone of power when people are looking elsewhere for threats. The third's brain started to work on what she mentioned and said, yes, I suppose it would be, especially if things were to change suddenly by retirement or death. I see your point. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. As his mind started to work on the hidden details that was just given. Ruby asked, so what do you plan to do with me? The third said, there's not much I can do. I mean, for a shrine maiden such as yourself to be told by her leader to be the concubine of someone is something I have no control over, and neither would my council. Ruby laughed and said, I think you would have made a great kitsune Hokage-sama. The third nods and said, I am taking a leap of faith on you, but with so many of my ninja already aware of you plus the security risk that each poses, I have no way to actually do anything to you, though you are not to harm anyone in this village or I will be forced to lock you up. Just cause I can't kill you without killing Naruto does not mean I can't punish you, maiden or not. Ruby said, I understand. I do wish to aid him in his training when possible, sir. The third said, what he does in his private time is his own problem. I won't intrude, but when he has missions or team training, then you are not allowed to join in. Just because you have a way to bypass most of my village's security does not mean I will let you bypass the rest. Ruby nods and looked at Tsunade, who was thinking everything over, and asked, what is your decision, Tsunade? Do you accept my bet and receive 1 hour with your brother now, or do you pass this only chance up? Tsunade asked, any 5 jutsu, right, as long as they are not bloodline required or suicidal. Ruby nods and Tsunade thought before smiling and said, you got yourself a bet. Ruby asked, what are the 5 jutsu? Tsunade smiled and said, Hiraishin, Rasengan, Kuchio's no Jutsu, Doryu Juheiki, Earth-style Rampart, Suoro no Jutsu, Water Prison Technique, she said as a smug look crossed her face. Ruby smiled and said, so you agree for Naruto to learn 2 of his father's techniques with only one that Jiraiya himself knows how to do and no one else on the other. Summoning, which is a jutsu that requires you to sign some kind of contract. A jutsu that allows you to erect a huge wall that can defend a side of a village, which only someone with an earth affinity and Junin level chakra control can use, and a hidden mist Anbu capture jutsu. You got yourself a deal. As Nawaki blinked and looked around and said, how the hell? As he looked at everyone and then locked eyes with his sister. Ruby said, let's give her an hour. I can only do this once, Tsunade, so make the best of it. As she walked toward the door. The third saw the look on his former student's face and nods and leads Sakura, Shizune, and Ruby out of the room. Meanwhile, inside Naruto's head, Naruto awoke and found himself in an arena, and he blinked and said, hello, anyone there? Naruto looked around and saw a man walking toward him with red hair and a light purple, almost violet fighting gi on and a rose on his chest. Naruto looked around and asked, who are you and where am I? The man said, my name is not important, young Naruto, at least not yet. As for where we are currently in your mind where Kyuubi used to reside. Naruto looked at the man with narrowed eyes and asked, what do you mean used to? What happened to her? The man smiled and said, relax, her part in this little adventure of being inside of you is over. You have forgiven her in the future and now she has her human body to use. She is currently talking with your Hokage and a few others, but she's not in any harm. She's explaining what was the real reason for her attack. Nothing will happen to her, so relax. Naruto looked at him and asked, what are you doing here and how do you know about the future? The man said, I know a great many things, Namikaze. As for what I am doing here is because you have awakened your bloodline, and as such I felt it would be a good time to visit. Naruto blinked and asked, what bloodline? The man said, you have one of the most powerful and also one of the most dangerous bloodlines ever. The Rinnegan. Naruto blinked and asked, never heard of it. What is it? The man smiled and said, I am so glad you asked. You see, the Rinnegan is fabled to be the most powerful, and whoever has it is said to be the master of every form of jutsu. In truth, what it does is allow you to do multiple forms of jutsu all at once. Naruto asked, how does it do that? The man said, well, by giving you extra bodies. Naruto scrunched his nose and said, so it's basically gives you a clone body. The man laughed and held his side and said, no, my young friend. Here, let me show you what I mean. Look into my eyes. Naruto looked into the man's eyes and he felt lightheaded and dizzy. After a few moments he could see all right, and he looked around and saw 3 new men standing there. One was a black hair with sunglasses, a sleeveless coat with white fur at the top, and the coat itself was dark green. A pair of black pants and a black shirt. Greed from Fullmetal Alchemist, and no, I don't own anything from either him or the show. Beside him was a man who had a black sword with a white slash going the length of it. Orange hair and a long black cloak that was blood red on the inside. Ichigo in his Bankai form from Bleach. Don't own. The last person was the most noticeable of the group. He had black hair and was dressed in a dark blue robe with a purple sash across one side of his chest. He also had a set of prayer beads around his right hand and was holding a holy staff in his left. Moroku from Inuyasha don't own. Naruto asked, who are they? The original man said, now before I tell you about them I should mention something. You know how your dear Kyuubi has 9 tails? Well, as of now she only has 6, just like the rest of your wives when they reach full power. I took the tails of darkness, chaos, and light from her. As for why I did that is something special. Allow me to show you what I mean. Each of these men have a special ability. Normally your bloodline, the first time you activate your bloodline and look into someone's eyes, you will create the bodies of whoever that person believes is the absolute best at each form of jutsu, though the person has to be dead. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, kenjutsu, and blood jutsu. Now because you first looked into my eyes it is different for you. Instead of 5 bodies you shall only have 3 extras. You will not have a genjutsu body because of the fact when you have your eyes activated, and since you are a kitsune you will not be affected by any genjutsu. If they are not active you're only as good as you normally are. As for you ninjutsu, I think you can cover your own with your own body and don't need one. Now let me get to these men. Starting with the man on the left with the sunglasses. His name is Greed. He is your taijutsu master. Inside your mind he has a spirit, and when you are not using him or the others they shall all be inside of you. Your dear demented uncle chooses to keep them in a cave because he is afraid of dying. As long as one of his bodies live he can revive the others. You are the same way, but I don't want you to fall for that weakness, so don't make the same mistake most bloodline users make and rely on it too much. Now getting back to Greed here. His special ability is his body is indestructible to all taijutsu and kenjutsu. The only way to harm him is with ninjutsu. Now before I forget, while on that subject, some jutsu won't be able to be used while using your bloodline. One that I know of is any kind of bunshin jutsu. Your mind won't be able to handle the strain of making them, so don't try using your kajunshins with them or you will die and kill not only yourself but your mates. Greed smiled and said, I don't think he's so hot. The man said, silence Greed. Now as for why I chose him for you. He is the embodiment of chaos. I used the tail of chaos I took from the Kyuubi to summon him here. Now as for why him. You and him are perfect for each other. You both are very flexible. You both believe a good defense is a strong offense, and when you fight you both think the same way. Punch first, punch last, punch them until they're down and then punch them some more until they can't move. Greed looked at Naruto and smiled an evil smile. The man sighed and said, anyways, for you to use his body you must go and fight each other. As you do you both will learn each other's styles, giving you a very unique style that can't be copied. I should warn you though that his strength and speed is affected by your own levels. If you can only pick up 600 pounds and run for 10 minutes on your own, he would be able to pick up around 700 pounds and run for around 12 minutes. He is only slightly stronger than your normal body, but it will keep improving as your own does. This is true for all 3 of the bodies. They each are only a little better in their particular field than you are, so work on speed, strength, ceiling speed, and stamina. Now as for the Carrot Top. The Carrot Top said, hey, cut me some slack. The man chuckled and said, his name is Ichigo. He is your Kenjutsu master and what is called a wizard. I chose him because you both rely on brute power and reacting to the situation on hand at the moment. I took the Kyuubi power of darkness to create him because of what he used to be. Neither of you have a set style, so that makes you unpredicatable. Now you will have to teach Ichigo how to use shurikens, kunais, and your trench knives, and he will teach you how to use a sword. Now as for a special ability. He has an attack where he powers up for 11 seconds, at which time a mask covers his face. Once that mask breaks after time is up, he will actually be weakened and not much help. It is a one-time attack that can only be used once every 24 hours, so don't waste it, and should only be used to finish off an enemy at the end of battle or to give you a hand when you most need it. He can be hurt, but he is so good with a sword nearly no one can get close enough to touch him. Neither him nor Greed, when you use them, can use ninjutsu. That will all be one you. Ichigo said. Damn, at least I don't have to worry about taking anyone's souls now since I am a soul. Naruto asked. You take people's souls? Ichigo laughs and said. When I was still alive, kid, I was at one time a Shinigami, which is why he said I was darkness. The shadow of death is the darkness in all mortals' hearts, so yeah, I took souls, and no, I can't bring someone back to life. Naruto scrunches his nose and looks at the last guy and asked. So what's his story? The man said. That would be Moroku. He is a lecherous monk. He will be your blood jutsu person. His ability with seals and other archaic writings. You will have to learn what he knows, as he will have to learn what you know also, but the one good thing is while you are in here you have a lot more time on your hands. As for special abilities, Moroku here has two actually. The prayer beads on his right hand holds a tunnel of void. I took the power of light from Kyuubi to get him being a monk. The second ability he has is during his life he killed lots of summons. He can summon one kind to aid you in battle, but that is a surprise. You will still be able to sign a normal summoning contract, so don't worry about it. Also, any enemy summon that Moroku here kills will also be able to be summoned by him, and he can control them. Now as for what that wind tunnel in his hand does. It allows him to stop any ninjutsu attack and absorb it without risk, but the problem is the more he uses it, the more his hand is damaged. I would not use it more than a few times a day so he can heal the damage, so if you can avoid the attacks, do it, but if you can't avoid it, then use it. At least that's what I would do. You yourself will have to work on how to use them yourselves. Anyways, my time here is up, so I will see you, and remember, while in here they have a soul and can do things without your control, but when you summon them they will all be extensions of you, and it is something you should also learn to use before battle. Ask the Hokage how to summon and show him the seal with the kanji of blood, tie and ken on your arm, and tell him it's part of your bloodline. And he was gone in a swirl of rose petals. Naruto sighed and said, so what should we do now? As he looked around and saw a scroll laying on the ground where the man disappeared from, and walked over and read it. Naruto. This scroll gives you instructions for the test I have set up for you. The form I came to you today in was my true form, but sometime in your life we shall meet again. You will have to find me, discover who I am, and give me what is mine when you know who I am. When you do that, you shall learn the full truth about everything you want to know. Until then, good luck. Greed said. Let's test you. As he popped his knuckles and charged Naruto. Back with Tsunade and Nawaki. Tsunade hugged her brother and asked, is it really you? Nawaki said, yeah, it's me, sis. It's good to see you again. Tsunade burst into tears and said, I am sorry I couldn't save you. Nawaki said, it's not your fault, sis. It's Orochimaru's. Making Tsunade stop and look at her brother before asking, what do you mean? Nawaki said, he's the one who sold my team out for that attack. The Iwa Nins bragged about it before I died. Apparently they gave him some information on some kind of research in exchange for the info on our ninjas. Tsunade clenched her fist in rage and said, I will kill that bastard. Nawaki said, you will get your chance soon, sis. He's coming back to Konoha to try and destroy it. Tsunade looked at her brother and asked, how do you know that? Nawaki said, I have watched over you since that day. I know what you went through, and I was joined by another who loves you also. He said he would be waiting for you, but said don't cut yourself short on happiness for feeling sorry for him. If you find love Aegean, go ahead, he won't mind. I also happen to have taken to watching his life, pointing toward Naruto, since he filled your heart with the love that I had once filled. The love of a little brother. I could never thank him for making you smile, Aegean, so when I saw the girls come back in time, I followed them. When you're dead, time is meaningless. Anyways, I must say that I can't wait for you to lose this bet and have you become the goddamn Hokage, Aegean. Tsunade asked. What do you mean, Aegean? Naoki said. After the third was killed, Jiraiya and Naruto here came to find you. You made a bet and used that necklace as part of it. Naruto learned the final step of the Rasengan in a week and used it to save your life in battle, thus giving you hope, Aegean. Now I know you want more time to hold me and say how sorry you are, but I never was good at all that mushy crap, so I am just going to say that I love you, sis, and that I am proud of you, and I will be waiting for you on the other side. Don't let my brother there get into too much trouble without you, and don't cause him so much brain damage. He only gives nicknames to those he actually cares about. Goodbye, sis. As he kissed his sister on the head before starting to fade away. After he disappeared, the spiritual form of Naoki appeared looking at the room as Dan stood beside him, and another figure appeared and said, I appreciate you both agreeing to do this. The test that I have set up for the boy will be tough and he needs her in his life. The love of a wife is great for most things, but siblings, mothers are another story altogether. There will come a time he will tell her things that he won't tell his mates. Dan said, it's the least we can do for you since you have been kind enough to let us give her soul some peace and make it where she will be able to finally pass on when she dies. The figure said, yes, wallowing in self-pity of the soul is one thing that keeps you from passing on to the other side. If you can't forgive yourself, then you can't rest. Both Naoki and Dan nod before all three fade away. Tsunade closed her eyes and let tears flow down her face after her brother disappeared, and she stiffened when she felt a pair of arms wrap around her from behind and a voice said, it's okay, lady, let it go. And Tsunade burst into tears and turned herself with her eyes closed and cried into the chest of the person who was holding her. After about 20 minutes, the door to the room opened and the third walked in with Shizune, Sakura and Ruby, and Sakura said, what's going on, Naruto-kun? Naruto made a few hand motion and a shadow clone appeared and walked over and laid down of a bed before replacing himself with the sleeping Tsunade. After she was on the bed, Naruto punched the clone and said, damn sadist, as he got up and walked over to the group. The third looked at Naruto's eyes and asked, how do you feel, Naruto? Naruto said, you don't want to know that answers. I have been in my mind for what seemed like a month fighting with my bloodline and getting my handed to me. By the way, how are you doing, Sakura-chan? I guess since you're up and around that you're okay. Sakura said. Yeah, Ino arrived with her team and the Hokage and a few others, and Ino killed Mizuki. Naruto closed his hand and popped his knuckles and asked, was it Mizuki who attacked us? I never saw who it was since all I saw were the weapons coming at your blind side. The third said. Yes, it was Naruto. A voice asked, so what's your bloodline like, kid? From behind the third, and Naruto blinked and went wide-eyed before covering it and said, all right, as he cut his eyes to the third. The third said, relax, Naruto, I know the truth about her and Ino and Sakura as well as a few others. I know who she used to be, but I won't punish her as long as she does nothing to bring trouble. Naruto sighed in relief and said, do you feel okay, Kyuubi? The guy who helped me with my bloodline told me he took 3 of your tails. The ones for darkness, light, and chaos. Kyuubi nods and asked, who was this man? Naruto said, I don't know. He was a man with a rose on his chest, red hair and. Kyuubi said, and a purple fight NGGI. Naruto nods and asked, how did you know? Kyuubi said, he's $#$#. As she looked and everyone was looking at her funny. Kyuubi asked, what? The third said, when you started to say his name you spoke in some language that none of us know. Kyuubi sighed and said, he does not want anyone to know his name yet. Not surprising really with who he is. Anyways, Naruto, did he say anything else? Naruto said, just that he gave me some kind of test to do, but I don't think he wants me to mention it since he's so secretive. Kyuubi nods and said, well, I can't tell you my real name until you pass my test, kid, but for now I am going by the name of Ruby. It's the name I went by when I was at the temple. I already told you my story about how I became the Kyuubi since we met. Naruto nods and asked, hey old man, can you tell me how to summon? The third asked, why? Naruto said, my bloodline gives me extra bodies to fight with. I am still learning to use it, but the man who helped me get started with it. He told me to show you these. As he showed the tattoo on his arm and said, he told me a little about how my bloodline works, but it's really confusing to explain. Summoning is involved. The third said, I would, but you see there is a little bet going on right now, and I don't think it would be fair if I told you how. Sakura sighed and said, you use your blood and wipe it across the seal, and then you do the hand signs or boar, inu, bird, monkey and ram before you slam your hands into the ground, calling out Kuchio's no jutsu. Everyone looked at her and she said, what? Naruto became the next toad holder like his father and I was the slug, what do you expect? The third narrowed his eyes and asked, what about the other member of Team 7? Sakura said, can't tell. It's one of the things that has a major role in the future and will most likely kill me. The third sighs and nods and said, she's right Naruto, though with the type you have there you just have to wipe the blood across the seals before slamming then onto the ground saying Kuchio's no jutsu. Those types of seals are a real speed saver. Naruto nods and bites his thumb and wipes the blood over the 3 seals and said Kuchio's no jutsu, as he slammed his hand into the ground. Suddenly 3 puffs of smoke appeared and Naruto blinked and said, whoa, that's weird. As he blinked and his eyes had changed from their normal blue to blue and red circles. The third looked and said, well, those are weirds. Ichigo said, what? Greed said, R. Moroku said, you. Naruto said, talking. And all 4 said, about. As Naruto looked around and was trying to figure out what he was seeing. Each of the other participants in the room were also an Ino who had awoken said, that was freaky. Making everyone look at her and Naruto asked, hey Ino, could you drop the Kajbunshin so I can tell which is the real one? Ino looked confused and the third said, I see. Naruto, Ino does not have Kajbunshins. There is only one Ino there. You are seeing the same thing out of 4 sets of eyes. I believe that is part of your bloodline. It allows you to see multiple directions at once, but you can't tell which is the real you. It lets you watch your own back, so to speak. Naruto asked, so how can I figure out which is the one I am looking out of? Sakura looked uncomfortable and said, not that I like the idea, but I do know how your uncle does it. The third narrowed his eyes and said, his uncle, the same one who? Sakura nods and the third asked, can you tell me anything about him? Sakura said, all I can tell you is that he has 6 bodies where Naruto here only has 4. Why I don't know, but I do know that each only uses a certain form of fighting. Naruto nods and said, yeah, from what I was told, the first person whose eyes you look into when you awaken, it picks out who they think is the best at each of the 6 forms of jutsu and then creates a body of them, though the person has to be dead already at that point. The third asked, then why do you only have 4? Naruto said, well, when my eyes are active I am immune to all genjutsu, so the guy said he did not feel I needed one, and as for ninjutsu he said I can handle those on my own. The one with the sword is kenjutsu, the monk here is bloodjutsu, and, that reminds me. As Naruto starts raising one hand at a time until he saw the monk's hand raise and then had it bite its thumb, going through some jutsu and slamming his hands into the ground, and suddenly a puff of smoke appeared and Naruto said, where is he and why does that creature have the same eyes I do? Whoa, I am flying. As a foot-tall bee started to fly around the room and then Naruto blinked as the bee went up in smoke and the monk was back. Naruto asked, what happened? I tried to move my arms again and then the bee was gone and that body was back. The third said, I don't know Naruto, but I believe you won't be able to sign another contract since you have bees. Naruto said, no, that's not right, old man. That I do know. The man told me that what it is, that I could use his summon and any summon that he kills, but I can also sign a summoning contract also. My bloodline won't affect it. The third sighed and rubs his eyes and said, well, I need to get back to my office. I trust you all are okay now. Naruto thought, how do I release the summoning? And suddenly the 3 bodies went up in smoke and Naruto's eyes turned back to blue and he asked, okay. I have a question, who is that lady over there and who are you? I recognize your family medical room, old man, but I am confused about what's been going on. Shizune stepped forward and said, my name is Shizune. That over there is the legendary Sannin Tsunade. We were passing through when the Hokage asked us to check on your condition since you had an unusual poison. Don't worry too much about it right now. When she awakens we will be leaving but we should be back for the exams. Don't forget to tell him about Tsunade bet Sakura-san. I really would like to see Tsunade lose. As she walked over to Tsunade's bed, Naruto looked at her and asked, "Okay, what bet?" The third said, "Well, Tsunade made a bet that you had to learn 5 jutsu before the exams in a few months. If you do learn them she will become the next Hokage and don't worry, she is actually the granddaughter of the Shadaime and niece of the Nadaime. She does not hate you for the Kyuubi so relax." Naruto tense position faded and asked, "So what are the 5 jutsu?" Sakura said, "Well they are Hiraishin, Rasengan, Kuchio's no Jutsu, Doryu Juheiki, Earth-style Rampart, Suoro no Jutsu, Water Prison Technique. I can help you with the Water Jutsu and Ino can help you with the Earth Jutsu. You have been working on the Rasengan already and..." The third blinked and said, "He has." Naruto asked, "I have, what is it?" Sakura said, "Remember the water balloons." Naruto held out his hand and a blue sphere started to form but after a few moments it lost stability and he released it and said, "So that's what that jutsu is called. You guys never wrote the name for it so I was not sure." The third asked, "How many steps are there?" Ruby said, "For his father's 3 but Naruto learned another 2 steps and created 2 more versions in the future. We plan to have him learn them also. He finished the jutsu." The third got wide-eyed and asked, "What step is he on?" Kyuubi said, "He's got the first and second stage. Now he just has to put them together and control it." The third nods and said, "Who knows how to do it?" Ruby said, "Since it was his father's jutsu and is precious to him I refuse to tell anyone how to do it. The only reason Sakura knows the first step is because she helped him learn control in the future and that meant going back to the basics. After that I told him the second stage and the third stage." The third said, "I only want Naruto to know that jutsu. The more who know it the bigger risk someone can figure it out." Ruby said, "Yeah, Kakashi figured it out from seeing Naruto in the future use it enough as well as his memory of the Yondaime to aid." The third sighed and asked, "So what are your plans?" Sakura looked at Naruto and said, "Can I make a request Hokage-sama?" The third said, "You can but I won't promise anything." Sakura said, "Fair enough. Would it be possible for me to start working at the hospital, sir? I mean I would like to get some extra money if possible and I think I proved I am more than capable." The third sighed and said, "I suppose I can though it will be suspicious of someone just fresh out of the academy to be as skilled as you are." Sakura said, "I know and I talked to Shizune and she said she would agree to sign off on my medical license for me and back that she's been my teacher for years. That will take most of the suspicion away." The third said, "Very well. I will put you as an apprentice at the hospital with 1 day a week for now. Will that work?" Sakura said, "I will take anything I can get, sir." The third nods and Ino cut her eyes at her friend questionably and thought, "What's going on forehead?" Sakura thought, "My mother has kicked me out of my home. Tenten sent a message when I first woke up and told me that my mother heard how I was found and figured out what I was doing. She threw all my stuff into the trash. She was passing by when she saw her doing it and asked what was going on. My mother told her that her daughter was dead and all that was left was some demon whore who does not deserve to live. Tenten said she agreed with her and tricked my mother so she could get my stuff and has it all sealed in scrolls but I don't have a place to stay." Ino gasped and said out loud, "That bitch. I am going to kill her." As she clenched her fist drawing everyone's attention. Sakura turned pale as the Hokage asked, "What's wrong Ino?" Ino who was still in rant mode said without thinking said, "That bitch kicked Sakura out after hearing how she was found. How she found out I don't know but after I kick her I am going to find out and kick Thier." As she rubbed her hands together. Naruto looked down and said, "I am sorry Sakura-chan, I never planned for this to happen. If there is an..." He was cut off by Sakura who placed her finger on his lip as she looked at him in the eyes. Sakura smiled and said, "It was my choice and if my mother is too much of an idiot to see the truth in things then I don't care if she gave me birth. I don't see her as a mother." Naruto pulled her finger away and said, "But you lost your home because you chose to be. Now you don't have a place to stay." Sakura said, "That was why I asked the Hokage if I could get extra time at the hospital. To make some money so I can get my own apartment." The third was looking at this and Naruto said, You can stay at my place, Sakura-chan. Sakura smiled and said, No, Naruto, your apartment is nice and all, but it's a one-person place. Even if we shared the same bed every night, there still would be an uncomfortable situation where neither of us could truly stretch out and relax. Naruto said, Then I ask that you let me help you get an apartment. I mean, if it was not for me, then. The third, who was watching this, smiled to himself as he put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, stopping him, and said, Perhaps I have an idea that might be good for everyone. You see, since Naruto here has awakened his bloodline, which is, as far as I know, officially the only known user of the bloodline Rinnegan. Yes, I know your uncle has it, but I don't want the world to know we know about him yet. As seeing as you have awakened it, that puts a whole new twist on things. Remember how I could not allow you to have your inheritance until you were either became a chunin or were financially able to support yourself. Well, since you have awakened it, you qualify for support from the village to found your clan based on the clan restoration laws. All I have to do is get the council to agree, but I can handle that. If they do agree, then you can have your family estates as well as your family name. Naruto looked at Sakura and said, I will do whatever it takes, old man. I don't want anyone to suffer because of me, and especially someone I care for like Sakura-chan here. Sakura smiled as a tear fell down her cheek, and Tsunade, who had awoken and listened into conversation all the way, and frowned when she heard that Naruto had already had the summoning part down and was on his way to finishing the Rasengan. She looked at the group of girls, including her apprentice, and waited to see how this all played out. The third said, Well, I will go and talk with the council this afternoon and see how it works out. For now, Sakura could stay with you or any of her friends until this mess gets out of the way. As he turned and left the room, Naruto said, I know you don't want to, but I must insist that you stay with me at least until we hear what the council says. As the third was getting ready to leave his family compound, he was stopped by Tsunade, who had snuck out of the room, and said, What are the odds that he will get through with the council's agreement? The third sighed and led her into his private study before sealing the room off and said, Truthfully, not good. The clans have always supported Naruto with the exception of the Uchihas. Truth is, that is why each of the clan heads were in his classroom in the academy. I had a private meeting with them, and I purposely had Naruto fail the academy the first 2 times through so he would be with them. I thought that if he had the clan's support, that the rest would follow their lead. Tsunade was stunned and said, You purposely failed him. Why? As she was getting mad. The third said, I did not fail him myself. I put him under instructors I knew who hated him and would fail him. I did it because the civilians had been planning to use the law that states if a shinobi attacks a civilian that they would be executed as the worst punishment or imprisoned at the lightest unless in self-defense. With 2/3 of the council against him, do you honestly believe that should he have passed, someone would not have orchestrated an attack to make him defend himself, and it would be sure that it would be seen as him attacking? The longer he would be in the academy, the safer he would be, and then when he did graduate with an instructor who would not hate him, that the clans would be in a position to support his claim of self-defense. After all, even the council would not dare to call the major clans a liar. Tsunade clenched her fist and said, I see. I don't like it, but I do see where you're coming from. If the council is so much against him and you, why do you not replace them? The third sighed and said, Unfortunately, I can't. You see, the rules state that only way the Hokage can change council is to do it the day they are elected. Since I replaced Minato, I could not replace them, and that is why so much of this crap was allowed to go. I am hoping that you lose the bet and that you replace them, but odds are you will win this one, because even if he does somehow learn 4 of those, just you the 5th one, the Hiraishans won't be able to be learned without a miracle. Tsunade said, Perhaps, perhaps not. Anyways, you have a meeting to get to. The third said, You're right. Well, what we said here is classified. I don't want Naruto to hate me for looking after his own health. I only did it to save his life. Tsunade said, I know. Good luck. As she watched him cancel the sealing jutsu before leaving. After he was gone, she asked, So what do you have to say, Jiraiya? As she turned to look at the wall behind her, and a shape distorted as Jiraiya appeared. Jiraiya said, It's good to see you, Aegean. Tell me, what is it you're doing in Konoha when you said you would never return? Suan said, I will tell you after the council meeting. Let's go. I want to see this. As she leaves quickly, followed by Jiraiya. Around 20 minutes later, Naruto, Sakura, Shizune, Ruby and Ino were all in Naruto apartment eating and Naruto asked, "So how is it?" Ino said, "I must say Naruto-kun, your cooking is pretty good. It has only improved since we were in the academy." Shizune said, "I must agree Naruto. This is rather good. I wish to thank you for inviting me to a home-cooked meal though I do have to ask why." Naruto said, "Well, from what I was told is that you and that blonde-haired woman Tsunade checked on us and made sure we were okay. For that you have my thanks." Shizune said, "Well, we really did not do much. I mean Sakura here has done an amazing job with Ino help fixing you up. The rest was just bedside stuff and we only arrived today after we were summoned. The real work had been done already." Naruto said, "Well, it's the thought that counts." Shizune looked at Ino and Sakura and asked, "So tell me, what does two lovely ladies like you find in someone as good of a cook as Naruto here?" Sakura said, "Well, that is a secret that only those who can truly get past his smile can figure out." Shizune said, "Really? Well, what is it? I mean, what drives you, Naruto?" As she looked at him. Naruto said, "I don't know what you mean." Shizune asked, "What is it that you feel is the real reason you are a ninja? What goals do you have and why are they important to you?" Both Ino and Sakura stopped eating and looked at Naruto. In the future, his goal had been to be Hokage so he would be respected and could protect his precious people. Ruby, however, had her mind elsewhere at the moment. She was trying to figure out if she could still read his thoughts. Naruto leaned back in his chair and put both his hands behind his head. He began looking at the ceiling and asked, "Have any of you ever truly sat down and looked at a waterfall? I mean, not just see the water falling off a cliff to the ground below, but I mean the true beauty of looking at the waterfall." Ruby asked, "What does that have to do with anything, Kit?" Learning she couldn't still hear his thoughts. Naruto sighed and said, "For me it's like this. The water above the cliff represents my parents. I am the water that fell off the cliff itself. The day I was born I left my parents and fell from where they are. They now are looking at me from up high as I landed on my 2 feet, but at this moment now I am gaining speed in the river that makes up my life. I am joined by others from other streams and together with those people who help make the river I am in bigger or heading onward. I don't know where it leads or what is around the bend. I know that sometime in my life those who have joined me will go their own path as I must also, but I know someday I will be reach the sea and join those who I had once been with. When I meet them Aegean, I want to be able to look each of them in the eye, tell them how much I care for them and have them look back at me with love as we have our families play in the great ocean." As he closed his eyes and smiled. All 4 women blinked and Ruby said, "Whoa. That was deep." Naruto said, "Yeah, but to simplify it I guess I can say is I want to keep going until I get all my loved ones, create a family and have them go out and create something beautiful to the world like an ocean." Shizune said, "My, you're certainly a sweet talker." Naruto snorts and said, "No, and that was just some random thoughts I had. I just truthfully don't know anymore. I mean, my emotions are screwed up and with everything that has happened I don't know what to feel. I used to want to be Hokage, but truthfully right now, I could live without it. I feel numb and cold actually. The only time I don't feel cold is when I am with someone like Sakura-chan, Inakin and Ruby here. I know we have only just gotten together, but it feels to me like I can't live without the warmth of them. Like I would die without them, and when I was inside my mind earlier I was numb. I mean, sure I feel, but all I was feeling was empty, so for right now I don't know what drives me." Shizune looked at him and said, "It's emotional, huh? I mean, nearly dying after just finding love and fear you lose something that was precious to you. Tsunade was the same way after her fiancé died. Perhaps you should talk to her and work on the problem. I mean, you said it yourself that your emotions are screwed up right now. Even your outlook on life is screwed up and you just read us some poetry from a book I see on your bookshelf over there. I know the girls here are thinking that you could talk to them, but I don't think so. I mean, you should talk to a neutral party who knows how you feel and learn from them so you don't start doubting your feelings for the girls. Well, I hate to eat and run, but I need to check on Tsunade and find out what she's doing. If you want I can ask her to talk to you before we leave." Naruto thought a moment and said, "I would like that." Making Ino and Sakura look down. Ruby said, "Naruto, why don't you rest a little bit while Sakura, Ino and I go get her things? It will give you some time to think." Naruto nods and walks to his bedroom, and before anyone could say anything, both Ino and Sakura were grabbed by Ruby and Shizune and left in a swirl of leaves. They all appeared on the Hokage monument, and Sakura asked, "What the hell was that about Shizune?" Shizune said, "Can't you see it? He's lost mentally." Ruby said, "She's right. This is just like how he truly was before the wave mission before. That attack and then everything else on him has pressured his emotions to the point if he can't work it out somehow he will become another Itachi, unable to feel emotions. He's scared." Ino asked, "What can we do?" Shizune sighed and said, "Well, I hate to say it, but just be there as friends for now. If you push too hard you can break him." Sakura asked, "How do you know so much about it, Shizune?" Shizune sighed and said, "What I tell you does not go to anyone, not even Tsunade. After my uncle died and Tsunade was planning to leave Konoha, the Sandaime came to me and gave me a mission. The mission is an SS rank mission that has not been recorded on any scroll or anywhere. He would send me money every month to live on if I would keep Tsunade from going over the edge. I was trained by my uncle just like you were, Ino, in the art of the human mind. I had to do a mental evaluation of Tsunade every year, and in the event she became mentally unstable and dangerous, it was my job to." Ino asked, "It was your job to what, Shizune?" Shizune looked down and said, "It was my job to eliminate her." As she burst into tears. Everyone was shocked by this. No one knew what to say, and Ruby pulled Shizune into a hug and said, "It's not easy, is it? To know you might be responsible to kill someone you care for. I know it was not for Naruto-kun in the future either when he had to face the Uchiha. In fact, it could have destroyed you, but luckily for us you never had to." Shizune nods and Sakura asked, "So what now?" Ruby said, "Well, for now I think you should move in with Naruto and me if things dawn." "What the hell?" As she looked at the village, drawing everyone's attention. Sakura gasped and said, "That's." Shizune said, "Katsuyu." Finishing the sentence. Ino said, "Come on." As she ran down the face of the Hokage mountain with chakra on her feet, followed by the others. Earlier in the day, Danzo and the two elders were sitting in Danzo's private office, and Danzo said, "Let me see if I understand you completely. Tsunade has returned to the village and is currently at the Sarutobi compound." Homura said, "Yes. I believe she is here to check on the boy, and the two girls we heard are currently there under Sarutobi control. I think it's time we use that plan. The boy is becoming too strong. From what reports we have received, he is using several Chunin and Junin level techniques as well as gaining the respect of a few more people in the village. If the village starts to like him and he continue to get stronger, it will be just like having his father alive. Can't let him get any stronger or he might become a threat to us. Luckily for us, Sarutobi won't tell who his father was for fear of Iwa. If that info comes out, then there will be shift in power. We must use that plan." Danzo sighed and said, "That plan might work. I mean, it's risky, but it's worth a shot. Do I have your support if we go through with this?" Homura said, "Yes, I am tired of staying in his shadow and it's time we control this village. If the heirs to the clan can make names for themselves, they will surely have the next Hokage chosen from their ranks, and then we will lose all the power we have gained. I would rather support you as an advisor than to be thrown away." Danzo said, "Very well. I warn you that should you try anything, I shall have my men kill you both." Both nod and leave. A little later in the day, Tsunade and Jiraiya had been sitting quietly in the back of the council chambers, concealed in one of Jiraiya's peeking genjutsu so no one could see them or detect them. The Hokage had just walked into the room and taken his seat after everyone else had showed up. Homura, one of the Sandaime Genin teammates and current village elder, said, "I am surprised you heard about our decision so fast, Sarutobi, but we will not change our mind. The boy must die." Making the third and the two Sanins question what the elder was talking about. The third asked, "What are you referring to, Homura?" Homura blinked and asked, "Are you not here concerning the charges that have been brought up against Uzumaki in regards to the rape of Sakura Haruno and the murder of a civilian of Konoha, Mizuki?" The third said, "First off, what rape? From everything I have seen and heard, there has been no rape." Danzo said as he pulled out a file, "We have here a copy of the Anbu report for the incident that recently happened at the training ground behind the Hokage monument. We have found traces of semen whose DNA matches that of Uzumaki as well as blood that matches Ms. Haruna. We also have a complaint signed by the girl's mother saying she never consented for her daughter to be with the boy, therefore since she is underage it is rape and under the laws of Konoha fall under the council decision. Tsunade was getting pissed listening to this, but before she could say anything the third said, first off, both Sakura and Naruto are ninja of this village, meaning they fall under my control. Second, the moment Sakura graduated from the academy her mother lost all parental rights to her, so Sakura could sleep with anyone she wants and her mother can't say a damn thing, especially when she has kicked her own daughter out to fend for herself. Third, I had a doctor check Sakura for anything that might have shown any signs of non-consensual and found none. The blood that was found was from a wound from when the Chunin Mizuki attacked Naruto and Sakura. Homura said, I am sorry to tell you, but the council had already signed Mizuki's request to retire earlier in the day, so he was a civilian. The third said, wrong. Since I never signed it or even was notified about it, Mizuki was technically a missing nin for defecting, as he was getting mad. Danzo said, well then it's unfortunate for you that the boy will be dead before the sun sets, as my root have already been dispatched to take care of him with the backing of the council. Hiyash said, half the council, all of the clans voted against this. The third called for Anbu but none came, but the door did open but Tsunade walked in. In the back of the room both Tsunade and Jiraiya got wide-eyed and Jiraiya put his hand over her mouth and whispers in her ear, hold it, let's see what these assholes are up to. She nods, but you could tell she was ready to kill. The third blinks and asked, what are you doing here, Tsunade? Tsunade said, I am here because I made a decision. I have decided it's time I restored my family name in this village with some pride and would like to take over as the next Hokage, sensei. The third looked at her and said, but Tsunade, what about? Tsunade said, it's not important. I made my decision. Don't you want to spend more time with your grandson, sensei? The third who said, well yes but. Tsunade said, but nothing, the council is already here, so let's put it to a vote. Who here wants me, Tsunade of the Sanin, granddaughter to the Shadaime and grandniece to the Nadaime, to take over as the next Hokage? When Danzo and the elders raised their hands, each of the civilians did also, but the clan heads each looked at one another and Homura said, well, by a majority of the vote Tsunade is elected Gadaime Hokage. What are your orders, Suant? Tsunade said, my first order is to order the execution of Naruto Uzumaki. A voice from the back of the room said, I don't think so. As everyone turned and gasped as both Jiraiya and Suant appeared out of the genjutsu. Danzo thought, shit, if she had not been here I would have been named Hokage in an hour after the boy was dead and she would have been blamed for it. Got to play this right. Similar thoughts were going through the heads of the elders. Homura said, seize the imposter, pointing her finger at the real Tsunade. Jiraiya and Tsunade both start doing handsigsen with a little blood mixed in and Jiraiya said, Doden. Yomi Numa Earth Release. Swamp of the Underworld, as the entire room was turned into a swamp, making everyone stuck to the ground. Tsunade said, Kuchio's no jutsu, and the roof of the building was destroyed at Katsuyu was seen with Tsunade standing on her head. The third, who was in a defensive position, quickly captures the fake and said, you and whoever else is involved in this will be executed for treason. If you give me the names of those you work for I shall spare your life. As the Tsunade he was holding turned into another person who had a weird mask on her face. Tsunade said from on top of Katsuyu, since you so graciously saddled me with the job of Hokage, my first order of business is to dismiss the entire council except for the clan heads. You little shitheads forget that you are nothing but advisors to the Hokage and don't hold any real power. Now Jiraiya, help Sensei arrest the entire council and we help him figure out what the hell's going on here. I'm going to find the kid and protect him. As she starts jumping away as Katsuyu goes up in a puff of smoke. The woman the third held said, Danzo and the elders. They told my family if we did not use our special jutsu of impersonation to aid them they would cancel the medical treatments my family needs to survive. Danzo, realizing that the girl just revealed him, screamed, Root, kill her and the Hokage. As he throws an exploding tag at Jiraiya, forcing him to release the swamp as well as one at the girl, impaling her in the neck, killing her. He then quickly uses Shushin to leave. Jiraiya and the clan heads quickly aid the Hokage in capturing the elders as well as the civilian as several units of Anbu arrive along with Root ones. The third said, capture the elders, Danzo and any Root members you can. If they resist, kill them. With that, fighting began. As Tsunade was jumping from roof to roof, she was quickly surrounded by 10 root members. Tsunade got ready to fight when Shizune, Sakura, Ino, and Ruby arrived. Sakura asked, "What's going on, Shisho?" Tsunade looked at her and said while making sure no one moved to attack, "The council and your mother tried to frame Naruto for the death of Mizuki and rape of you. They also tried to impersonate me and put their imposter as Hokage. I don't know who is all in on it, but as for right now, I guess I am Godime." Sakura snorts and Ino said, "Just like old times, huh, forehead." Shizune said, "Not now, girls. If they are stalling us, then they must be also going after Naruto since they have not attacked." Sakura narrowed her eyes and thought, "Listen up, everyone. The council is pulling one of their stunts. Naruto-kun's in trouble from root, so if anyone can help him, it would be of big help. Shizune, Ino, Kyuubi and myself are all helping Tsunade with a few roots also." She quickly cut the mental link just in time to see the one in front of her begin hand signs. Shizune pulled up her sleeve and pulled a metal wire, launching Senbons at the two in front of her, clipping one but not to good and the other dodged. Ino cursed herself for not having any weapons and said, "Hey, you think you can go wild?" Sakura smiled, beginning her own hand signs, still trying to figure out what the guy in front of her was doing with such a long set of handins. She stops though as she saw a flower on the right sleeve of the man in front of her and said, "Shit, it's Sai," as she got a good look at the one in front of her. Tsunade, who was getting ready to fight, asked, "What?" Sakura looked at all the men and said, "They're all ink painting. They're not real. The one controlling them is nearby though and can bring anything he draws to life." Just then there was another explosion, this time from the roof of the building Naruto apartment was at, and while everyone was distracted, Sakura punched the roof, causing the entire building to shake, and ran forward, hitting the person in front of her, making it burst into ink. She then grabbed the one that was beside him and swung him as hard as she could at the ledge of the building across from them, as a distortion appeared and a genjutsu was released. A root member who was holding a drawing scroll said, "I must say I am impressed you can find me. Good day." With a smile that was very fake as he left in a swirl of leaves and the other ink members fell to the ground. Before anyone could say anything, Ruby, who had been holding her side, jumped toward Naruto apartment as her hand was covered in blood. Tsunade, who saw this, started to freeze up, but then she remembered her brother and thought, "I won't fail you, Aegean brother," as she jumps beside Ruby and began healing her as they jumped from roof to roof with the other girls. A few moments earlier, Naruto had been laying in his bed when he heard the door to his room open. He opened his eyes and saw a root Anbu standing there, and he asked, "How did you get in here?" The root said, "Stupid demon, you left so much blood from that attack that we just had to get a sample to get in. Now it's time for you to die," as he pulled out a kunai and went to stab Naruto. As it pierced his flesh, Naruto went up in smoke, revealing himself as a Kajbunshin. Back in the living room, the real Naruto appeared from a vase on the coffee table that he had hanged himself into and quickly bit his thumb before wiping the blood on the seal on his arm and slamming his hand on the ground, saying, "Kuchio's no jutsu." And suddenly the three other bodies of him all appeared. Naruto thought, "God, I hope this works." As he sent Greed into the room where the root member was, and the root went to stab him, but the blade broke in Naruto as Greed said, "Well, let's see how you like it." As he grabbed what was left of the blade still in the mon's hand and forced the shocked man to stab himself in the neck, killing him. Back in the living room, Naruto frowned and thought, "Worry later, survive now," as he grabbed as many of his weapons as he could. He then went toward the door and had Greed open it before walking out in the hall as two more swords came in contact with his body. Unlike the other root member though, Theseus' blades were not weak from not taking care of them, but the look on their faces from the clang metal hitting, well, in this case metal flesh, was priceless. Greed quickly went for the one on the left, with Ichigo going for the one on right. Naruto had to close his real eyes as he was having trouble keeping up and understanding everything he was seeing and controlling. The one Greed was fighting, having already learned weapons and taijutsu would not work, started doing hand signs. While this was going on, Ichigo was having a reasonable time just matching and blocking each strike on reflex. Naruto has not learned complete control of them yet, so he does not understand how to effectively use them yet. The body of Moroku was just standing there beside the real Naruto, not even in the hall yet. Seeing the one who was doing hand signs, Naruto decided to try something. He had Greed turn and run full speed toward Ichigo and had him tackle the guy on the ground as Ichigo had forced the root member to turn the sword away. The contact from the hit forced the monk's ribs to crack, and using the time he now had, Ichigo plunged his sword into the heart of the man Greed was still on top of. The other root, however, had just finished the hand signs and said, "Die Enden, great fireball," and a huge fireball charged toward both Ichigo and Greed. Naruto thought, "Release." And all three extra bodies went up in smoke as the fireball covered the view of where they had been and blew the wall at the end of the hall away in a huge explosion. After 10 seconds the man stopped, and Naruto took that moment to run out the apartment, running as fast as he could out of the now newly made exit, but not before receiving a kunai in the side. He jumped out of the hole and free fell until he latched himself onto a pole with his hands, using the force to make himself fly around it and let go, twisting in mid-air, landing on top of a store's overhead canvas. Springing off of it, he jumped to the ground below and took off, running through the screaming crowd that was running from the explosion and the demon boy. The root member ran to the hole to follow Naruto and jumped out, and on his way to the ground was impaled by at least 20 kunais from the roof across from the apartment building he just jumped out of. Tsunade, who lands beside Tenten, who had thrown the weapons and saw the root member fall to the ground, asked, "Where's Naruto?" Assuming this girl was one of the sisters. Tenten said, "Heading west about 15 seconds ahead of the man I killed," as she stepped back from the edge so no one saw her. Tsunade asked, "Any idea where he might be heading?" Just then an explosion hit toward the west side of the village. All 6 of them now took off toward the explosion. Naruto had been running and came across Team 7 training ground, where Kakashi was reading his book watching Sasuke, Choji and Shikamaru all work on the water walking, and Kakashi asked, "Shouldn't you be resting, Naruto?" Naruto pulled the kunai out of his side and said, "Help, Root," as he covered his side. Kakashi's eye got wide as he looked at Naruto, seeing the blood for the first time, and said, "Everyone, prepare for battle, protect Naruto now." Sasuke looked at Naruto and asked, "What does the Dobi need our protection from?" Kakashi said, "Shut up now, Uchiha, or I will kill you myself," as he landed beside Naruto and began using one of the few medical jutsu he knew. Shikamaru and Choji both ran over to check on Naruto and asked, "What's going on?" Naruto said, "I don't know, some of those root Anbu broke into my apartment and tried to kill me. I killed 2 of them already and a third was following." Before anyone had a chance to say anything, 6 root members appeared surrounding the group, and one said, "Surrender the demon now or be executed by order of the council and Danzo-sama for treason." Kakashi pulled up his hayate and said, "I will not allow you to harm one of my students." Shikamaru thought, "What the hell is it with this demon shit Aegean? Can't they see the truth?" as he got ready to defend Naruto. Just then Team 8 arrived and Kurenai said, "Kakashi, Danzo and the elders tried to take over the village and planned to eliminate Naruto in the process. Danzo escaped, but the elders are being held captive. Tsunade on her way to aid us, so we need to buy time for the Godime to arrive." Kakashi, who had used the moment Team 8 arrive as a distraction, pulled out a kunai with an exploding tag on it and threw it into the head of a root, killing him before it exploded, forcing the group to jump away. Kurenai quickly cast a genjutsu over herself and disappeared, only to appear behind one root member who found himself bound to a tree as she slit his throat. Naruto quickly went through the process of summoning his 3 bodies out. Aegean and Kiba asked, "What the hell?" as he dodged a kunai thrown by the root Anbu. Naruto said, "My bloodline, don't worry about it," as he had Ichigo and Greed charge one of the root and double team him. Sasuke smirked at the challenge of fighting someone stronger, became pissed Naruto had a bloodline. It increased even more as he saw Naruto's eyes change. Not to be outdone, he quickly started hand signs and said, "Hausenka no Jutsu, mythical fire phoenix technique," as he breathed out 5 fireballs. The root member started his own hand signs and said, "Sujinheki, water encampment wall," as a wall came up from the river blocking the fireballs, and he charged through the water to take advantage of the tired Uchiha. However, he was not prepared for the shurikens that were hidden in it. They hit him dead on and he fell to the ground. Sasuke, who was panting on his knees from using the jutsu while tired from the water walking exercise the 3 boys had been learning, felt sick from killing for the first time and threw up before passing out in his own vomit. Shikamaru, who was back to back with Choji, saw Sasuke pass out and said, "We go to cover Sasuke." Remember to conserve what chakra you have left for Kawarimi no Jutsu, change of body technique. It's so troublesome, as he held his kunai at the ready as both boys made their way over to Sasuke. While this was going on, Shino quickly hid and sent out his Kikaichu out to start sucking chakra off of the root members. Kiba and Akamaru both went to attack one who was trying to make his way to Naruto. As they approached, the man turned and threw a kunai at Kiba, meant to end his life, when Hinata jumped in front of the kunai and said, "Kaden," as she began to spin, grabbing the kunai that was thrown at her teammate and launching it back with 4 more at the man who replaced himself with a log before he was hit. Hinata, who had her Byakugan active, saw the mon's position and she changed her stance and said, "Hake Rokujuyansho, 8 divination signs, 64 palms of the hand," as she charged the man before he had a chance to move, and said as she started to hit, 2 palm, 4 palm, 8 palm, 16 palm, 32 palm, 64 palm strike, as she closed off 64 of his tenketsu. Naruto, who had discovered the man who his 2 clones was rather skilled, had not been prepared when he was stabbed in the back of the head by a thrown kunai. All fighting stopped as Hinata screamed, "Naruto," as she started to cry. Ichigo said, "Don't worry everyone, as long as one of my bodies still live, my bloodline will keep me alive. Don't drop your guard," as he plunged his sword into the man who was smirking, seeing the body of Naruto on the ground. Moroku walked over and pulled the kunai out of Naruto's head and thought, "Hope this works," as he bit his thumb, running through hand signs before slamming his hand in the body of Naruto that was covered in smoke, as he said, "Kuchio's no jutsu," and Naruto started to stir and get up, much to the shock of everyone. Naruto blinked and thought, "Thank God I found that book in my apartment giving instructions on my bloodline," as he thought back to earlier. Flashback. Naruto walked into his room after the girls left and saw a book sitting on his bed, and he walked over and there was a note on it that said, "Naruto-kun, I know we have not met and want for a while, but inside this book is all the information I have on your bloodline. I will give you a few words of advice before you read it. Not everything might be right, but the things I do know for sure are the parts about if you die. If one of your bodies die, walk over, and if there are any weapons in the body or whatever, pull them out and then go through the summoning jutsu, but instead of slamming your hands into the ground, slam them into the body. It heals all wounds and revives the body. Be warned though that each body only can be revived once every 2 hours, and each body can only revive the total number of bodies you have once per day. So for example, your uncle. When you fight him, he has 6 bodies total, counting his real one. He can revive them enough times to make it where you would have to kill him 37 times to make sure that he is dead. Be warned though that when you do this, the body that revives the one loses half its strength. If it loses all its strength, it will die and have to be revived again. To avoid this problem, don't revive one body at a time unless it's safe to do so. Do 2 bodies at once by slamming one hand on 2 bodies. Also know that when you activate your bloodline and awaken your other bodies, your chakra is divided amongst them evenly, so if you have 6 bodies, then your total chakra is divided into 1/6 each. Work on increasing your overall chakra levels to even more levels than you do right now. Your uncle has enough chakra to equal 8 cages. It's what truly makes him dangerous. Please be careful and know I hope you're happy. Good luck. SOC. Naruto smiled and started to open the book when he saw his apartment flash blue, and he quickly hid the book before creating a Kajbunshin and went to the front room and hanged himself into a vase as the Kajbunshin put him on the table before running to his bedroom, thinking, "It's a good thing boss put that seal to flash the entire apartment when someone is standing outside the door after him and Sakura kissed and were spied on. Let's see who this is. Damn it, Root, I recognize those damn masks from Gigi office from. Danzo, I think is his name." End flashback. Naruto got up and each of his bodies got into a square back to back, looking around. By this time more Root members had arrived, and Kakashi, who had already killed 6 and Kurenai, who had killed 5, were both sweating, and Naruto said, "Kakashi sensei, Kurenai sensei, take the rest and get out of here. It's me they want and I won't let anyone die for me," as his eyes were taking in the 30 Root members. Kakashi said, "Naruto, I won't leave my comrades behind." Naruto's eyes glossed over and said, "Thank you Kakashi, but if that's the way it has to be, then so be it," as he reached up to his forehead and pulled off his hayate. The Root members were all looking at what was going on. They had already lost around 20 members so far here and at least 40 back at the council chambers. This had not been the simple mission that it was supposed to be. Naruto heard Shikamaru say, "Troublesome," as he latched his shadow to Naruto and forced him to put the hayate that he was fixing to drop on the ground back around his head. Greed looked at Shikamaru and said, "Listen Shikamaru, you asked me once why I got all those glares and hatred, remember? The truth is simple. My father was Minato Namikaze. I was born on October 10th, the day my father gave his life to stop the Kyuubi. I said stop, not kill. The Kyuubi was sealed into an infant that day because it was the only thing strong enough to hold its chakra. I was that infant. Now let me go so I can save you." Shikamaru said. "You think I did not figure it out, idiot? I have known for a while now, as has Choji. You need to trust us a little more if you think we would be like these idiot over there," as he pointed to the root. Shino, who had been hiding, used his bug Shushin to appear beside Naruto and said, "My family also knows." Hiba said, "Most of the clan heirs know Naruto. After all, our parents saw how hard you tried in the academy and never did anything except try to be friendly to us. They told us the truth. Well, we did not know about your dad, but the fox we knew." Hinata said, "Don't listen to these idiots. You are no demon, Naruto-kun," as she smiled as Naruto's eyes got wide a moment before he said, "I see. Well, in that case I think we should finish this. What do you think, sensei?" With a smile on his face as he had been accepted by his peers. Kakashi smiled behind his mask and said, "Well, let's see what these idiots can do, shall we?" As he was surprised by how these genins had done so far. The root members all got ready to fight after thinking the boy was going to surrender to them. Just then the water from the river shot out and took the shape of a dragon as one of earth also came out near the forest, and both dragons charged the root members, who were too focused on the group in front of them to notice the 6 people who had joined during the little speech. This caused them to break formation and began fighting Aegean. Naruto frowned and closed all his eyes but one, and he brought that one's hands up to his face and said, "Well, I guess learning on my feet will have to work." As he pulled his now glowing hand across his face and a mask appeared on his face. Everyone froze when he did this because his chakra levels shot through the roof, and Ichigo said, "Flash step." And suddenly a second one appeared and a third, a fourth, but the first disappeared and then the second as he was moving at incredible speeds. Kakashi thought as he saw this with his Sharingan, after images. He's traveling 10 times faster than he was before. As he watched as a root member screamed out in pain, followed by the next closest one as blood flew out of their body as one of the after images appeared with sword ready to strike, but no one except Kakashi, who just barely kept up, saw the sword move. After the 5th root member screamed, Ichigo stopped and was on his knees panting as his after images fade, and Naruto then had Moroku begin doing hand signs after he bit his thumb and said, "Kuchio's no jutsu." And his body turned into a bee and he flew over and stabbed a man with his stinger, but when he pulled back the stinger stayed and Moroku fell to the ground as his body returned. Naruto started doing hand signs himself as Ichigo pulled a kunai of the dead root member beside him and threw it into the air, and Naruto said, "Kurigakure no jutsu, hidden mist technique," and the entire area was covered in mist. Sakura smirked as she cancelled the dragon, and when Naruto covered the area with mist she saw him leap out of the mist and grab the kunai in his hand and started to fall back down. Deciding to have some fun, she created 3 Kajbunshians and had them make go to different points in the mist and unleash ki and said together, "What do we have here? 8 points, larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now, which will be my attack?" As she was doing this, Ino ran and grabbed a few weapons from a dead root member's body. Shino shushined out of the mist because his bugs don't like water and to get away from the ki. Hiba bites his lip to overcome the ki, and Naruto regroups with his other bodies. Kurenai grabs Sasuke's body and said in a low voice, "Shikamaru, Choji, follow me and stay close," as she began leading them out of the mist. Kakashi thinks, Methinks the girl has serious mental issues, perhaps it's her time of the month. As he was looking through the fog and approaching Naruto location. Hinata for her part was also making her way toward Naruto, being the only one who could actually see in this mess. Tsunade, who was sitting on a tree limb looking down in the mist trying to find a way to help, thought, "Smart, obviously they are all pretty much spent on Charka from fighting until we got here. Naruto used the mist to cover the area and Sakura is using Muon Satsujin Jutsu, silent homicide technique to put the root members on edge. It's a clever way to buy them all time to recover and plan the next move. I see the Aburame has already fled the mist as is the Inazaku who is now hiding with his dog just a few yards away. Ino resupplying herself. That's strange, the Uchiha already out of the fight, guess he must have tried to show off, typical. At least Kurani there has him and the other two boys, look like a Nara and an Akamichi to me. That means the Hyuga I saw is still in there as is Naruto and Kakashi along with however many root members are in there. Sakura starts doing hand signs and whispers along with her Tukage Bunshins and said, Mizubunshin no Jutsu. As 20 water clones appeared however the Tukage Bunshins went up in smoke afterwards. The clones began heading into the mist each with a pair of kunais in hand. A few moments later a scream was heard and then a few moments later several splashes of water along with a few more screams. Kakashi arrived where Naruto was who was sweating and looked pale and asked, how's it going? Naruto looked at him and said, not good, the technique's using up a lot of my chakra right now to keep it going. Kakashi nods and looks around and asks, can you use your favorite jutsu? Naruto said, no, if I do I die, it's part of my bloodline. Kakashi nods and said, right, well since Hinata right there is here can you see anyone close to us? As he sees Hinata a few feet away. Hinata said, there are 10 of them currently heading toward us. Sakura has around 5 Mizubunshin left and I see another 12 looking around confused. The rest are already out of the mist. Kakashi said, right, both of you grab a hold of me and Naruto cancel your bloodline. I am going to shushin the 3 of us by Tsunade. Naruto releases his bloodline and all 3 go up in smoke. He then starts to sway a little and Kakashi grabs him and Hinata and leave in a swirl of leaves. They appear beside Tsunade who was ready to attack but relaxed when she saw who it was. She then saw Naruto condition as progressive signs of chakra exhaustion and said, release the mist. Naruto nods and does so only to pass out afterwards. When the mist started to fall one of the Mizubunshins had just slit the throat of one of the root members and all hell broke loose. What nobody had seen was the fact Tenten had surrounded the entire field and had laid traps out and the moment she saw everyone was cleared nearly 10,000 kunais and shurikens all launched in from every direction. The results was a massacre. All but 5 of the root members had been killed or a better word would be butchered. Those 5 quickly fled for their lives. Tsunade was frozen in fear. She may have suppressed it earlier but this was too much as the sight of all that blood and guts creeped her out since the last time she seen this was during wartime battlefields. Shizune herself had to look away even though she had seen many deaths in her life that was never the way she had seen it before. Sasuke who had awoken still covered in his own vomit lost his lunch Aegean but this time he did not pass out. He was having flashbacks of his family's death. Tenten for her part just looked on and acted unfazed. Truth was she was simply too shocked at the actual deaths that she caused to show any emotions currently. However as she finally realized what she don't the fact her face was pale and that she looked ready to heave was a good sign that she was mentally stable, well stable for a ninja. Choji dropped his bag of chips and Shikamaru was holding his head looking at the clouds not wanting to admit the fact this is what they have all been trained to do. Kakashi had his head down and Kurenai was standing beside Tenten with her hand on her shoulder as was Hinata who looked down. Hiba and his dog both were covering their noses and Shino surprisingly was the one who spoke breaking the silence and said, this is what we have been trained to do. Each of us had to take at least one life or helped ending a life. They were the enemy. We can honor their memory but we should not show remorse because they would not have for us. It's all we can do. Sakura sighed and hit Ino's arm and both of them started to do hand signs and said as they finished. Kaden. Body elimination no jutsu. And breathed out huge waves of fire that set all the blood and bodies on fire but left the grass and ground untouched. This was the scene the third and Jiraiya came across with several Anbu units. He looked around and asked, what happened here? Kakashi who had already pulled his hiate down said, 40 plus root members have been eliminated sir. As he saw the third's eye get wide before he passed out from chakra exhaustion. The third said, I see. Anbu, please take each of the genin to the hospital to be checked out and then escort them to their homes and please inform their families they might have had first kills. It is unknown right now. I will have them each be talked to by Their-sensei later. Leave Haruno and Uzumaki please. I will take care of both of them. Ruby, who had been sitting in the back watching everything, thought, this is not good. How could this have changed so much? As he moved to pick Naruto up, Ruby walked over and picked him up and said, I will take him, sir. Where would you like to take him, since it's not safe at his apartment now from what I saw when I went there earlier? The third sighed and said, take him back to my compound. Has this happened before? After her, Sakura, who he motioned to follow, and him were far enough away. Sakura sighed and said, yes and no, they made a move like this but several years from now. Nearly destroyed the village. I don't know what changed things though. The third nods and said, that means most likely the events you and the others know are not going to happen. I suppose it's back to working normal for now. At least I do know of some things to look out for thanks to this. Danzo, however, has gotten away and can cause us major trouble. How is everyone handling what happened back there, Sakura? Sakura said, I don't know. Naruto not stable at the moment, as we had already decided to slow down because of his trouble telling what emotions he actually is feeling right now. Tenten seemed upset. The last time she had to use that attack was to stop one person, not an entire platoon. Sasuke killed, so maybe his revenge mind might be different now. Hinata okay, as is Shino and Kiba. I think Kurenai mental teachings as well as that of Their clans have helped them understand. Ino and I are fine. Tsunade made me used to people dying as part of my training, and Ino has when she was under Ibiki as well. The third nods and said, alright, I want you and Naruto to stay at my compound. I will have someone get yours and his things and bring them there. I do not want anything happening, since Konohamaru has little respect for closed doors, especially at the compound. You also will not be sharing a room. This is only temporary until things settle down and we can get you and Naruto a safe place. Naruto, who was being carried by Ruby, kept his eyes closed as he listened to what was being said and thought, I need to talk to the old man privately, as he pretended to still be out. An hour after everyone made it back to his compound and were getting settled in, Naruto took the time to create a shadow clone and then snuck into the third's office. The third saw Naruto enter and close the door and said, can I talk to you, old man? The third said, Naruto, you can always talk to me. What is it you need? Naruto took a seat and said, it's about this whole mess going on. I need advice. The third said, why don't you explain it to me, since even I am not sure of everything going on? Naruto sighed and said, alright, but promise me you won't harm anyone or punish them. I mean, everyone has been doing everything for me and I don't want them hurt for doing it. Deal. The third nods and Naruto said, I lied to you when I told you how I found out about the Kyuubi and my father. I did not know about both until the day I graduated. Kyuubi then explained to me about the reason she attacked, being from the future, the girls, my parents, and other things. I knew when I was 7 that someone had taken to looking after me because of the stuff I got, and a scroll that told me they wanted to protect me and help me and that they had to fake their real feeling for me. After I learned about my family, I passed Sakura test she gave me, and then she told me the truth about her being a kitsune and the others. I don't really understand it all, but I do trust them, since all they have done is tried to take care of me. The thing is, when we were attacked, not today but whenever it was that I got hurt, my life flashed before my eyes. I was scared of what would happen to Sakura when we were attacked and what would happen without me there. Then today I took someone's life. People are always trying to take care of me and are almost getting hurt for it. I can't stand that thought. The problem is with everything that has been happening is I should be feeling something, but I am not. The more stuff that happens, the more I feel numb. I mean, sure, I feel love from Ino and Sakura, but I feel they love the future me, not the me here. I don't even know who the me here is. Everyone is trying to make me into what they say I should be, but not who I am. Even that guy who appeared in my head and messed with my bloodline seemed to be doing it to make me something else. I don't understand. The third listened and looked at Naruto, and for the first time he saw the utter sadness Naruto had hidden since he was 7. He closed his eyes and took a puff of his pipe and said, Naruto, do you know what mental battle fatigue is? Naruto shook his head no, and the third said, it's when a person undergoes a traumatic event like the loss of a good friend or loved one, or when someone has been fighting so long that they just want to quit everything, fighting, living, loving, everything. I have seen it before. Tsunade has gone through it after the death of her fiancé and brother. Kakashi has gone through it after the death of your father and his teammate. I went through it after the loss of my wife. We each had to find something to make us forget. For Kakashi it was Ika Ika paradise. For Tsunade it was gambling and sake and leaving away from her trouble. For me it was my job. It forced a rift between me and my son Assume. One that to this day has not been repaired completely. I shoved him off on the maids and servants of the clan and focused on my duties as a Hokage. It was you who brought me out of it, Naruto. When your father asked me to protect you, I used you as a crutch to mend my spirit. When I took you out to eat or play when you were younger, I felt like I did when I first became a father. I done things in your life that I am not proud of. Some that could make you hate me, but I did them for your own good and safety. It's because of you that my grandson is precious to me and that Asuma and I have come to a standing relationship. We acknowledge each other as family, but the life of father and son is gone. Someday I hope to repair it before my time is up. The third chuckled and said, listen to me rant about my own problems. The truth is, Naruto, each person has to find their own salvation from it. You're upset about taking a life. I can understand that. You're scared because you fear not being what everyone wants you to be. You're angry for the way your life is and what has happened. You're happy to finally have someone in your life to hold, but you're also upset that it took so long to get and you're worried that you can't keep it. Your emotions are all going in every direction and you're lost. That sum it up. Naruto listened and though before slowly nodding, and the third said, there is no right or wrong way to deal with this problem. Each person has to confront their own inner demons. It's something you will have to do on your own. It can save you or it can destroy you. I know you want me to find some way to say it will be all right or that it will be all gone tomorrow, but I won't lie about this to you. It won't. It may never. Only you can come to terms about this. Do you understand? Naruto looked down deep in thought and asked, did anyone tell you what I nearly did today to save the others? The third shook his head no, and Naruto continued, I nearly became a missing nin so the others would not die for me. Shikamaru stopped me and then the others told me they had already known about Kyuubi. If it would have been another second I would have made myself one just to end the fighting. I was a coward. The third got up and walked around his desk and hugged Naruto and said, no, you were protecting your friends and comrades as they were you. What happened today should not have happened, but it did. Nothing anyone says or does can change that. What matters is what you do now. Naruto asked, do you have any suggestions? The third thought and got up, walking over to his bookshelf and pulled out a book before sending chakra into the cover, and a genjutsu dropped. He then put the book back and walked to the safe and opened it. After a few moments he closed it and walked back to Naruto and handed him a scroll. The third said, that Naruto is all your family was able to leave you. Your father was not rich nor was he poor. Your mother and him had a 2-bedroom home and a few acres of land. Nothing much, but it was all theirs. They were simple people, Naruto. Most of the things in that house are already in your apartment since the sisters, as they are calling themselves, have already gotten them out. The only thing left are some cloths and a few dishes. Nothing that could be really considered of emotional value like I wish you could have. Why don't you read that while I go get us some tea and give me some time to think? Naruto nods and saw the blood seal, recognizing it as one, and bit his thumb before whipping the blood on it. Naruto opened the scroll and read, dear son, if you are reading this then you have reached the age of 16, became a chunin or have become financially stable or have awakened your bloodline. The reason I requested these things for you to find out about me is simple. If the wrong people found out about you before these happened, then you would be in danger. I had a lot of enemies, but they are not the ones I truly fear. My brother is the one I fear. I know this may be hard, but yes, I, Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, was the one who sealed the Kyuubi in you. I know you have learned of this by now, and for that I am sorry. Your mother is in labor right now and the doctors already said she would not survive, so for this I am sorry to leave you as an orphan. Below is several seals with objects such as jutsu scrolls, my diary, your mother's diary, all the money either of us have, as well as other things we thought you would need. There is also a locket with a picture of us in it for you so you know we love you. I wish I could write on and on about how much we love you and are proud of you, but time won't allow me. There are things you must know about to save your life. First off is about our bloodline. If you don't awaken it, then be thankful. It's a blessing and a curse. I know, however, that you most likely will awaken it though. It always happens. Our family history is a secret and our traditions are very weird unless you understand why. Our bloodline is called the Rinnegan. When one person awakens it, then another will also at some point in the life of the other. The two will eventually face each other. One will be of pure evil and one of pure good. For this reason we are often said to either cause a revolution in the world and change the world for the better or set the world back into darkness. The ninja world has looked at the oldest known member of our bloodline as the person who brought ninjutsu to the world. The truth is the world had been set back before him by one of our family members and most of the world's knowledge had been lost. When him and the other in our family fought, he killed the other and brought a revolution to the people of the world. Now when he did this, he had all his descendants go and leave any children they had as orphans in different villages. It is why me and my brother never knew about each other until we were adults. It's because the one who is evil will try and wipe out the one who is good for fear that he or she will stop them. If that happens, the world would be set back Aegean and may not recover. Since as far as I know you will be the last of our family line after I die later today, besides him I know it will be you who will awaken it. You must protect yourself and get stronger fast. He will come for you and you will have to face him. Take the money and the scrolls and give the Hokage the letter at the bottom and leave Konoha. Go and train. Keep moving. Don't leave any traces of where you were and learn the value of true strength. Don't seek him out. Conserve yourself so you can win. I know you will. I have faith in you. This is important. I know somehow that you will change the world into something more. I hate being the bringer of bad news, but please be careful. Protect your loved ones, even from yourself, because they will be used against you if he finds out about them. The only good thing about our family I can tell you is that our bloodline only awakens every 200 years. Hopefully after you defeat him, then it will become too diluted to ever activate Aegean. Good luck, son, and I love you. Sign. Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage of Konoha and your father. Peas. Your mother said she will castrate me if I don't tell you she loves you also. If the old saying about a boy falls in love with someone who is like their mother, then your wife will be hot-headed, strong-willed and determined to kick you and put you in your place every chance she gets. Also, being a little tomboyish doesn't hurt. Maybe even they will. Never mind. Naruto reread the scroll and so my uncle is that big of a threat. An image of his friends and loved ones flash in his head and he closed his eyes and let a tear fall down his face and thought, I think this would work. Dad's giving me the perfect reason to sort out my emotions. The third walked back in and asked as he poured some tea, is everything alright, Naruto? Naruto looked at the scroll before unsealing one that had the kanji for Hokage and said, yeah, Dad gave me some jutsu and advice that I am going to take. He said to give this to the Hokage and you would clear my leaving. The third got wide-eyed and asked, what do you mean leaving? As he took the scroll. Naruto said, Dad told me I need to train and leave to throw off my uncle or he will target my loved ones. He told me why I activated our bloodline. Here, read it yourself. As he handed the unsealed scroll to the third, who read it and then opened the other scroll and sighed before saying, why do you want to leave though? It's optional for you. You don't have to. Naruto said, well, I was thinking that if I left that would give me a chance to work out my feelings. I need time to figure out who I am. The third said, Naruto, it's not safe for you to leave. I mean, there are people after you because of Kyuubi, and there is also the fact your teammates need you. You can't just leave Sakura and Ino who love you either. Naruto got up and grabbed the scroll and said, I don't have a choice, old man. What happens the next time I am attacked? A lot of people died today who didn't have to, and it's all my fault. If I could have been stronger, then everyone would not have had to fight to protect me. Tenten would not have killed everyone she did. Sakura would not have had to given you a mental evaluation on everyone. Her mother would not have thrown her out and he burst into tears and said, I can't take it, old man. I don't know what to do. I am scared of the village, all right. I am afraid every time I turn around someone is going to attack me and my friends. What then? You can't just wish people back to life. It's to the point, old man, I am wondering when you or the girls will attack me. As he was screaming now. The third sighed and said with closed eyes, all right, I will let you leave on a training trip only. I want you to be back for the Chunin exams. Naruto nods and asked, "What about my teammates?" As he sits back down. The third sighed and said, "I am going to ask Tsunade to take Sakura with her when she leaves the village tomorrow. I talked to her while you were asleep and she said she will leave but come back when the time for the bet is. If you pass the bet, then she will accept the title with no doubt in her mind. I hope you do, because with what she pulled today at the council chambers will help Konoha more than I ever could. I will have Kakashi work on Sasuke since he is the only one who can train him right at this moment. I want you to go with Jiraiya." Naruto said, "Why should I? I mean, who is this Jiraiya guy?" The third said, "Jiraiya was your father's teacher and one of the Sanins." Naruto thought a moment and said, "No. I mean, I would like to learn from him, but I have a lot of stuff I need to work on my own, not try and have him turn me into my dad. I need time alone." The third said, "What about Ruby? I mean, she's connected to you. Whatever happens to you happens to her and vice versa." Naruto looked in thought and said, "I want her to stay here. As long as she's alive, you will know I am still fine. I don't want her to feel she's a slave to me. It would be a weakness my uncle could exploit if I run into him. Like you said, she's connected to me, and if she dies, so would I." The third frowns and thought, "Damn it, I don't want to send a genin alone by himself." He asked, "Where do you plan to go?" Naruto thought and said, "Ruby told me where the temple of Inari is. I am going to go there first and see if I can find any clues, since it was a place my uncle fought. I might find a weakness he has, or maybe something to fight that statue that he took." The third thought, "Damn it, he must have been planning to leave for a while to have answers like this. His father's scroll is an official order to allow him to come and go as he wish, so I can't stop him. I can have Jiraiya follow him. I guess that's the best I can do." He said, "All right, when do you plan to leave?" Naruto said, "Tonight. I want to use the distraction of everyone running around scared to leave before things settle down and can be seen leaving." The third said, "Are you planning on telling the girls? I mean, they will be worried about you." Naruto sighed and said, "I will leave a scroll for them. I can't face them right now. It's a coward's way and it makes me sick to do it, but I know if I see them then I won't be able to leave and I must. If not for my sake, then Tier." The third asked, "Is there anything you need Naruto? Ask and I can try." Naruto thought and said, "Just look after everyone till I get back. Hell, if I can I will try and take your job when I get back and say screw Tsunade's bet." The third chuckled and said, "Very well and good luck, Naruto." Naruto nods and gets up and leaves quickly, heading for his room to get his things there and then heading for his apartment. An hour later, Naruto was standing at the gates and it was midnight. He closed his eyes and said, "I know you're there." Two figures landed behind him and one said, "I know why you're doing this, kid, but you don't have to." The other one walked behind him and wrapped her arms around him from behind and said, "Why is it every time I find love they always want to leave?" Naruto looked down and said, "It's not that I want to, but I have to. I am afraid of what I will do if I stay. I am going to Inari Ruby. From there I don't know, but I will be back for the Chunin exams. Please look after everyone." Ruby said, "Naruto, if you're going there, look for the only male statue. When you find it, there is a secret hidden there. Only you can open it, so I don't know what it is, but I know it will help." Naruto nods and turns and kisses the one holding him and said, "I love you, my cherry blossom. You also, Ruby. Goodbye." As he dashed for the entrance as fast as he could so no one could see the tears. Unfortunately for him, both had advanced hearing and whispered together, "Goodbye."